Consequence Podcast Network.
My friendship to all of you precludes my involvement with any one of you. But if you wanna make love, then I do too, and I'll be right there behind you. All in the name of oh, all in the name of oh, all in the name of oh.
Greetings, constant listeners, and welcome to the Losers Club, a Stephen King podcast presented by the Consequence Podcast Network. I'm Michael Rothman, editor-in-chief and president of Consequence of Sound, and I'm here with my co-hosts,
Randall Colburn, the rockin' one,
and Mackenzie Gerber.
Now, you can hear us pretty well, right? I think so. That's
Yes.
because we're recording from a studio here in Chicago, Illinois. That wasn't always the case, though. When we started this podcast, we were actually huddled around an old Yeti microphone in Mac's apartment that he doesn't even live in anymore.
That's right.
And there were not 4 or 3 of us. There were like 6 or 7. So we wanted to go back to our older episodes and make sure that you, constant listener, actually have a good grasp on knowing that this is not how it's always going to sound. You know, it's a very rough quality, and we just happen to have that rough quality over Stephen King's most iconic books. So
Yeah, it's rough. But I'd say, for Carrie, Salem's Lot, The Shining, Rage, and The Stand, I believe.
Night Shift, too.
Yeah.
And
Night
Night Shift.
Shift, yeah.
We recorded those episodes in a very sort of primitive way, doing our best. That was before we got our studio, which makes us sound so lovely.
Yeah.
But yeah, so you'll notice that the audio quality is going to be a little bit not up to par, but I'd say the content of the conversations are still very, very good. I'm very proud of the analysis we did. You'll notice a few other changes too, like in these early episodes, we talk about everything.
Everything.
Yeah, we didn't now we stretch our legs a bit. We do separate episodes for the movies, for other things. And for here, we're basically like, let's talk about all the Stephen King news, as well as the book, as well as the films, as well as the plays, as well as everything. So these episodes run long. Well, I mean, a lot of ours do, but these run extra long because we're talking about those things. And you'll also notice that kind of the way that we break down our conversations now is a little bit different. We refine that over time.
Yeah.
So yeah, you'll notice that it's a little bit rougher, but it's the same quality Losers Club content
And
that
these,
you've always wanted.
these episodes nearly killed us. The Night Shift episode, I got the flu because we recorded everything.
We
in one
recorded
day.
for 11 hours straight,
Yeah.
I think.
Two
Yeah.
episodes back to back covering all 20 stories?
All 20 stories
And the movies.
And the movies. It was exhausting. I think towards the end of the episode, I started fading away.
Dan started crying.
Dan started crying. I cried in the Shining episode, I believe.
Yeah.
So yeah, these episodes are special.
They're very good episodes.
They're very special episodes, but we did want to make sure that you didn't go into this podcast thinking that it's going to sound like this forever. Because obviously, as you could hear from us right now, that's just not the case.
Yeah, if you're just popping in to hear like, oh, I love Salem's Lot, I'm going to check out this new podcast. Why does it sound like they're recording underwater? You know, we just never really thought that. I think that, you know, we were testing things out. We were seeing if anybody would even care if we did this podcast. And luckily, a lot of you guys did care, and you listened and supported us and followed us on social media. And so we were able to, you know, beef up the sound, make things sound better, expand our lineup, and refine the way that we do things as it is now. So.
Because so much has changed since 2017, not only with us, but the whole world at large. And you're going to hear about all of it as you're journeying through each one of these episodes. So why don't we let you take your bagged lunch and your old warm cup of coffee and enjoy a long, long, long night shift.
This is part 2 of our Night Shift series of episodes. Obviously, this is the Stephen King's first short story collection. 2 weeks ago, we talked about our 10 least favorite stories in Night Shift. Now we're going to talk about our 10 favorite stories in Night Shift, and in the next episode, we're going to be talking about the various adaptations. There's so many, we need to devote an entire episode to it. And they're all great. Just kidding.
When we say least favorite, let's be clear, some of them were pretty good.
Yeah, no. There was a lot. This is a very strong collection.
If I'm being blunt, some of the film adaptations for this were some of the worst things, the atrocities committed to celluloid of all time.
Well, thank you guys so much for listening. As always, we really appreciate your engagement. We love your reviews on iTunes. That stuff really helps us. So if you haven't left us a review yet, and if you really like us and you don't think our episodes are too long, then then please leave us a review.
Shots fired.
That, by the way, is what the children call shade.
The shade of it all. Okay, so before we get started, I'd love for us to just go around. Usually this is the point where we talk about sort of how we first encountered Night Shift, but we did that last episode. So if you are really, really aching to know what it was like when I got Night Shift from the local library, then please go back to that episode. But again, my name is Randall Colburn. I'm a senior staff writer at Consequence of Sound.
My name is Allison Shoemaker. I'm a staff writer at Consequence of Sound, and my favorite kind of corn is corn on the cob.
Ooh, all right. My name is Dan Caffrey. I'm a senior staff writer at Consequence of Sound. I'm going to say I like it when they do that. Sometimes you go to restaurants, there'll be like a roast corn and black bean mix. It's like a kind of some cracked red pepper in there.
Kind of like Morrison's Cafeteria used to do that.
Yeah. That's my favorite kind of corn.
Deep breath.
Well, I'm Justin Gerber, also a staff writer at Consequence of Sound and co-host of Gerber and Gerber YouTube video series. My favorite corn is probably Children of the Corn 2 Urban Sacrifice.
Is that the second one?
If not, Children of the Corn 666 Isaac's Return.
Wait, is it really called Urban Sacrifice?
Urban Harvest?
Urban Harvest. Oh, I'm sorry. Let's backtrack. Children of the Corn 2 The Final Sacrifice and Children of the Corn 3 Urban Harvest.
Oh my god, I love that it's urban.
And I am the other half of Gerber and Gerber, Mackenzie Gerber, and my favorite kind of corn is candy corn. I'm a real dread.
That is true. You ate half a bag of candy corn at my house 2 weeks ago.
We don't have to talk about that.
Yeah, that's good. Off-season candy corn. My name is Michael Rothman. I'm editor-in-chief of Consequence of Sound, and if you want to get me to do anything in the world, you gotta get me some cornbread. I love cornbread so much.
I would say my favorite corn is any that has been pulled out of someone's torn out eye sockets.
Ooh.
Whoa.
Spoiler.
Sorry, that's like...
That would have been a good segue later on.
I know. That image literally stuck with me throughout. That was like the scariest shit when I...
How do you feel about Jonathan Davis's corn?
I actually really like Got the Life Still to that song.
What about Jonathan Davis's Garfield? Or is that Jim Davis?
That's
Jim Davis.
And
Never
now
mind.
we've gone
too far.
All right, let's get
So,
into it.
as I said, we're going to be discussing the top 10 stories, in our opinion, of Night Shift. But before we do that, we're going to talk about some of the latest Stephen King, the hot takes, the new news, in a little section we call Needful Tweets.
He's not a human being. No! Don't you see what he's done? Let's kill them all. Let God sort them out.
Oh, we've got some great updates this time around. King, he's been fairly laid back as of late. So what he's been doing is he's been enjoying some scary zombies of The Walking Dead. He particularly called out Melissa McBride's performance as Carol. And the best thing is that he's been shaking the house with a little rhino bucket. And Steve, I'd like to suggest a rhino bucket track. And it's called Ride With Yourself, and it's off the Wayne's World soundtrack, which just celebrated its 25th anniversary back in February. If you haven't heard that song, please do. It's hands down the band's best track, and it's not just because I grew up with soundtracks. I actually do think it's their best song, and it's got like an AC/DC vibe. You'd love it. It'd fit right into Maximum Overdrive Part 2.
Can't wait for Maximum Overdrive Part 2.
I know.
Mike, I think there's also some articles on Wayne's World that were recently written and posted on Consequence of Sound.
Oh, yeah,
that
we
right?
did have some. Yeah.
Check that out.
My fellow colleague, Matt Mellis, and I wrote some cool articles.
Is that a shameless plug if I had nothing to do with those articles?
Yeah, it's not a shameless plug.
No,
it's a nice
more
plug.
like hey, check it out.
Oh, that's a nice plug.
Yeah, there you
well,
go.
thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Speaking of rock and roll, King happened to throw some shade at The Who on March 15th, writing, "Remember when The Who sang 'Hope I Die Before I Get Old'? They are now scheduled to play an extended gig in Vegas." It's pretty good.
Pretty good. Pretty good.
Pretty good.
To be fair, though, I think Britney Spears had a residency out there, too.
Oh, yeah, she did.
Yeah, but she didn't talk about dying young.
That's true.
That's not.
She almost died young.
She did. Remember when she was going crazy? She was kind of a King character in herself for a little bit.
Yeah, I would agree. She had that song "Crazy" as well.
Oh yeah,
Randall, you were a big Britney fan, right? Oh, okay.
Guess not. Must have been Aguilera fan.
I guess it was a different time.
Anyway, speaking of death, and this is probably the worst seg I could possibly ever go into.
Yeah.
But King paid some respects to rock and roll legend Chuck Berry this week, writing, "Chuck Berry died. This breaks my heart, but 90 years old ain't bad for rock and roll. Johnny be good forever." Today he posted up he followed up with a tribute, which he said, "Anthony Boy by Chuck Berry, a little act of genius, the only song in rock history to rhyme school with vestibule." It's nice. What was your favorite Chuck Berry track?
What was that song in Back to the Future?
Oh, Johnny Be Good.
Yeah.
I like that other song that like people always cover.
Which one's that?
I think it's Johnny Be Good.
I Feel Good. No, that's
yeah.
Hey, he invented rock and roll though.
He did invent rock and roll. So and there's a lot of great videos you can find of him on YouTube. Sadly, Berry wasn't the only artist he paid tribute to this week. At 68 years of age, Bernie Wrightson also passed away, succumbing to a battle with brain cancer. King called him a good friend and a great collaborator, adding that he'll miss him. Fans similarly lamented his loss, sharing his countless contributions to the King lore, from his work on Creepshow to his illustrations behind Cycle of the Werewolf. He also did the restored Stand illustrations, and he did some artwork for Wolves of Kala.
Yeah. I just reread it. We either recently reread The Stand or reading it for the first time, and those illustrations add a whole new dimension to the book. It's not like they're on every other page either. Yeah. There's maybe about a dozen or so, but between that and obviously we'll be talking about Cycle of the Werewolf in a few months, and it's a sad day.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, just when those do punctuate the book, it really brings something else to it.
I like the Sweet Treat.
Oh, that's my favorite.
That's the grossest one. Oh.
Yeah, look up the Sweet Treat, folks.
But we'll be posting a bunch of his artwork on our socials throughout the month, so to pay tribute to the legend. Mm-hmm. But to counter the dark with the light, as King is wont to do with his own novels, he kept everyone's spirits high, naturally, with more photos of his terrible, awful, no good, bad dog, Molly, the thing of evil. I don't know about you, but that creature, it's like Cujo with a school bus body. Just terrifying, disgusting, gross. No, I'm just joking. I absolutely love corgis, and that will be my all-time icebreaker with King if I ever get a chance to actually talk to him again. I did meet him once, and I shook his hand, and I totally bombed and said the dumbest thing to him.
What did you say to him?
I said something like, "Thanks for giving me nightmares."
I thought you said oh, that's all.
What? It sounds like you sound like
you're welcome, asshole.
Yeah.
You sound like Robert Englund talking to him.
Yeah, right.
Ready.
Yeah, right. Thanks for giving me nightmares. Yeah, I also had like a red and green stripe. Yeah, he was probably he just looked at me probably like, "I've heard this 1,000 times, you fucking uninspired idiot." Like you hack.
That's great. The next time you can actually say to him, "Hey, it's great to see you. I really love your dog."
Yeah,
what a great end.
Yeah, that's gonna be a good end. I know.
Finally, somebody likes his corgi.
Dan, you met Stephen King once too, right? What did he say to you?
Okay.
All right.
Okay.
Let's move on.
Doesn't want to share with it.
Right, that's fine.
Do we have anything else we want to cover?
Yeah. This is going back to Stephen King's tweet that you mentioned in the last episode, Mike, where he says, never to use the expressions "for some reason" or "for a long moment." Mm-hmm. He later confessed that he has used "for a long moment." Mm-hmm. He gets it from those meaningful glances in the movies. But he does say, "for some reason, never." One of our constant listeners found an example of Uncle Stevie breaking his rule, and it comes in. It's from Jerusalem's Lot, and here's the sentence, and this is from,
which is what we've been covering.
We want to thank John for giving us this little tidbit here. Here we go. He grins and whispers, and for some reason of his own, has begun to haunt our cellar when not in Jerusalem's Lot. So I know it's an early story. Maybe Uncle Stevie forgot, but it's right there.
To quote Conan, it looks like we made chump meat out of the maestro.
Good night.
Now let's talk about, let's head into our number 10 entry in our top 10. And guess what? It's a prequel to a book we've already discussed. And it's not called Salem's Lot. It's called Jerusalem's Lot.
The curious thing about Jerusalem's Lot is that we've all talked about how those of us who have read the Night Shift when we were younger, Jerusalem's Lot was always a hard one to get through. I mean, it's in 19th century, I believe. It's written in a very archaic type of prose. It's a epistolatory novel, where it's all written in letters, so it's very heady. And it's a very ballsy way to start off the collection. It's easily the hardest story to read just in terms of form. I didn't always appreciate when I was younger, but however, reading it this time around, I loved it. I love the Dracula influence just with the way of how it's written, like it's all through letters. I love this idea that it establishes Jerusalem's Lot, which is not where all the story takes place. The main character is actually in a house called Chapelwaite that's near a town called Preacher's Corners, and Jerusalem's Lot is like through the woods. But I love this idea of, we've already been introduced to it through Salem's Lot, right? Mm-hmm. I mean, it's vampires and this or that. And I love this idea of establishing this town, not even through vampires. I mean, there's two that you kind of see at a certain point in the house, but for the most part...
They mentioned Nosferatu.
They do, yeah, which is just like, a term for the undead. But, you could argue whether or not that's a hallucination of the main character, his dead relatives. What I really love about this story is that it establishes Jerusalem's Lot as just being a community that attracts evil no matter what. And that is super scary to me. And that really relates to this idea of Stephen King just building these very just insidious worlds. I mean, honestly, the story owes more really to Lovecraft than it does to Dracula in terms of the type of evil that the guy's relative is inviting into this church.
Big worm.
It's a big worm, yeah. This cosmic entity. And so I just love what this story does. I mean, I think it was one of the first instances of Stephen King revisiting somewhere he's gone before, and I love that he did it. It wasn't, hey, you know what? I'm going to show that there are vampires here hundreds of years ago. It was more like, no, this guy opened a portal to this thing that just made this town a magnet for evil, and that just really got under my skin.
Yeah, I mean, this is the first of four we're going to cover in this episode that were written that were not previously published in anything else like Cavalier or Playboy or anything like that. But again, it touched upon what Salem's Lot's all about, because Salem's Lot has always been evil, even before vampires show up. We established that, and then we definitely get down to it with the whole worm aspect in Jerusalem's Lot. But what was also interesting is that Boone's bloodline also has had a twinge of evil to it as well.
Yeah, Saint worshippers.
And it has nothing necessarily to do with Salem's Lot, so I thought the whole thing of evil always lingering was an interesting theme as well.
I like the introduction of the mysteries of the worm. Just that whole thing where, I mean, we see like similar themes in like Hellboy,
yeah,
like the Conqueror worm, or vampires that are associated with parasitic worms, like in FX's The Strain,
Lair of the White Worm.
Yeah.
FX's The Strain.
I love, I love how they do that, and I also like how this is kind of a return to the writing style from Carrie, where it's all diary entries and letters.
Is it epistolatory? Am I saying that right? Apostolatory? There's certain.
Don't answer. Just let him suffer with this for the rest of the podcast. Because I can see you just battling this in your head right now.
What is it?
Yeah.
I to the letter thing. I love the letter thing. I think it's definitely his homage to Lovecraft. I mean, this is just pure Lovecraft,
cosmic horror,
down to the style, the setting, to the horror that's in there. I mean, like Lovecraft is, the whole Cthulhu thing. Granted, the worm isn't that, but it's that huge, irrationally large, unthinkable beast that has almost psychic kind of controls in a weird way. Like
it hypnoptizes people.
Yeah, and the way that the letters go back and forth, and the style of that kind of upper class.
Yeah,
like thing. It just felt like this is him. You hear about like songwriters trying on like different styles that have been the past. Like like Ryan Adams recently just definitely waxed into a little bit of Springsteen.
He did Tom Petty before that.
Did some Tom Petty and stuff like that. This is definitely him like being like, I'm gonna, one of my favorite authors is Lovecraft. I'm gonna fucking do a Lovecraft story. And like that is, I mean, this is a Lovecraft story. Like it's a modern Lovecraft. It's like written in the modern vice of what Lovecraft did, which was the big letters and like weird, creepy gothic
blue
stuff.
blood families by the sea dealing with evil.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think like what I really like about Night Shift as a whole that Jerusalem's Lot really kind of displays is how Stephen King wasn't really Stephen King yet when he wrote these. He wasn't identified by a specific style, and as good as some of his later books are, I think there is the sense that there was a specific voice that he had settled into, and that's what his publishers were looking for and things of that nature. There's so much experimentation in this book that I don't even know if we see in Skeleton Crew and Nightmares and Dreamscapes as much, because he was a young writer when he was doing these. And so you see the influence of the people that he grew up reading so vividly in these, and that's what I really love about Jerusalem's Lot.
Well, yeah, and with the Lovecraft connection here, and something I noticed this time reading Night Shift was he talks about criminals a lot, and as we know from later on with Joy Land, the Colorado Kid, King does like a hard-boiled crime story, and that pops up in Quitters Inc., the Ledge.
The Ledge, for sure.
And then we had talked before about Battleground being this kind of action movie, and then, stuff like Graveyard Shift and the Mangler just being gruesome. And there's certainly gruesome things in Jerusalem's Lot, but yeah, it's very much like a literary exercise. And I don't know, we read this book, in some cases 20 years after it came out, in some cases almost 40 years after it came out. And I just love that. Like, I wonder if I was a Stephen King fan, if I had just read those first 3-4 books, whatever, and I had gotten this short story collection, and I opened it up to Jerusalem's Lot, it would feel like such a fresh thing to me. Mm-hmm. It's like weird, because he is imitating this other writer. Like you said, it's very much his Lovecraft bid. But if I was just a King fan reading that, I would be like, man, this is unlike... Like, by imitating this one guy, he has this story that is unlike anything else he's ever written, and I love that there's never... I mean, this is one of the few stories in here where he doesn't have to over-explain everything, and maybe that's because it's told in this journal form. I mean, we get that Boone's relatives, the one Philip, I think, was a Satanist and kind of mixed being a preacher with being a devil worshiper and summoned this thing, but he never really bothers to explain too much about the exact effect the worm has, other than just spreading evil, and I just love that.
There's something I really love, too, that makes me think of Edgar Allan Poe.
Yes.
Where, because you're existing you're seeing this all through these letters and texts, it's all first-person reminiscence, and you sense the mounting horror, and it dips into this grandiose language. It just feels very much of a time, and it's not the time in which it was written, but as opposed to capturing, like, the Greasers or the romance of the 60s, you really all of a sudden feel like it could be fucking the House of Usher could be in Jerusalem's Lot, you know? It just feels like that would make sense.
Here's a question, though. Does it need to be called Jerusalem's Lot? Does it need to take place within the world of that book?
Yeah,
Does it need to be called 10 Cloverfield Lane? I don't know.
I mean, I do like that just because it does hint at this world building that would be, or world connections that would be such an important part later on. I feel like it's just like a nice Easter egg. I mean, it is kind of weird, like we were saying before. The house it's not even in Jerusalem's Lot, and it's not the Marston house. And the easy move, I think, would have just had it been the Marston house, and that's just been a house that's been there forever because we already know that that's this like place that attracts evil. But I don't know, I kind of like that. My one thing, just in terms of structure, I do love that Night Shift ends with the woman in the room because it's great. But I think it would still be cool if it starts with the Salem's Lot prequel, Jerusalem's Lot, and then it ends with One for the Road, which I think is the second to last story. Or it's one of the last ones. I think
it's the penultimate story.
So I almost wish he would have like owned up to that that sort of bookending structure a little bit more.
Again, does it need to take place at Jerusalem's Lot? Ultimately, no.
Yeah. Am I glad it does?
It's funny because thinking back before I sat down to reread this again recently, I did think that he was writing from the Marston house. I totally forgot that it wasn't even in Salem's Lot.
Yeah, they don't even mention I mean, I guess it's there, but they don't mention the Marston house at all.
Well, they don't because Marston was way before.
Yeah.
It's way before that, yeah.
Is it weird, too? At first, this was sort of a problem for me when I read it, but I'm thinking back, I'm like, no, it's kind of neat. So, at the end of Salem's Lot, and as we hear more about in One for the Road, Ben Mears and Mark Petrie, they go back and they torch the town, right?
Yeah.
Like, the idea is that this town is dead, even though there's some lingering vampires. Like, the evil came to the town, it cycled everything out, it's done, blah, blah, blah. Now, when they come across Jerusalem's Lot in this book, or in this story...
And this story that we're talking about?
Yeah, it's abandoned. Like, it's had an instance of that already. Like, so, like when Philip Boone, I guess, did this ritual. I mean, essentially wiped out everyone in the town. So it's kind of it's weird for them to stumble across the town and it's already a ghost town.
You know, and as I was wandering through Jerusalem's lot, I was looking for an exit, and then I heard a voice cry, "I am the doorway!" And that leads us to our number 9.
Number 9.
Favorite story in Night Shift, which is "I Am the Doorway," which is a story that personally, even though it constituted the cover art for a lot of the early editions, was a story that I had in many ways forgotten, personally.
So had I.
Yeah, this is the first story that really hit me hard, and is actually my number 1. Personally, Night Shift story. It follows Arthur. I wrote Arthur the astronaut, who explains to a friend that after participating in a manned Venus flyby, that he was exposed to an extraterrestrial contagion that slowly takes him over and makes him do terrible things. That's really summing it up. The infection results in tiny eyes that cover his hands, and he can simultaneously see through these alien eyes, and it's a doorway that
He is the doorway.
He sees humans through these alien eyes and sees that they're these monstrosities, and they make him.
That's my favorite part.
Yeah, it's terrifying. His own reflection scares himself because he sees what they see.
Yeah,
and to try to maintain his humanity and not murder people via the alien presence in his being, he ends up dousing his hands in kerosene and lights them on fire. Thinks that goes away, doesn't quite go away. Maybe for like several years, and then. The ending of this book, which is just horrifying. I think it's page 114, if someone can find it. I would just love for them to read that last couple of lines.
Well, sure, Mac, I'll read it. I get along just fine with these hooks. That's right, he's got hooks instead of hands because he cut off his hands.
It's a kingpin.
Hey, oh God. There was terrible pain for the first year or so, but the human body can adjust to almost anything. I shave with them, and I even tie my own shoelaces. And, as you can see, my typing is nice and even. I don't even expect to have any trouble putting the shotgun into my mouth or pulling the trigger. It started again 3 weeks ago, you see. There was a perfect circle of 12 golden eyes on my chest.
That's so eerie.
Yeah.
Another great scary story ending.
Yeah.
Something we don't think about a lot when it comes to alien science fiction is specifically how they see us. I mean, you have something like Independence Day or whatever, and we know they're a threat and they want to attack us, but there are very few stories that actually play with this idea of how they actually see us as organisms. Under the Skin does it, maybe a couple other things, but what was so terrifying, like you were saying, Mac, to me is that he is seeing through the eyes of this other being, seeing himself as something foreign and frightening that needs to be killed right away. I mean, to the point where he ends up exploding the head of a little boy he encounters with the flick of his hand or something. And it's also terrifying to see. I love Stephen King stories where it's a ultimately good person trying to struggle against this thing inflicted upon them, and I love seeing him struggle against it and failing in some ways because he does end up murdering someone, but then also doing the right thing at the end by presumably shooting himself if the being in his body lets him do that.
Well, I think a big theme here is fear of the other. Mm-hmm. And now we're looking at it from the quote unquote the other's perspective too. Mm-hmm. And isn't this? I guess this would be. If you're reading it chronologically, this is the first sci-fi Stephen King story, right? Because everything else has been pretty much horror up until this point.
Yeah, I guess so. Also, too, I will say, I mean, overall, I love this story. I love the imagery it plays with. I love the overall theme. It does rely a little bit too much, in my opinion, on the remember when monologue thing. Like, because his friend makes him. He was like, well, tell me this story. And he's like, I've already told you this story. He's like, tell me again. Well, and then it goes back to that thing. I mean, it's not quite as bad here because the tale of space travel is so compelling. It's not like in Rage where it's like, well, I'll tell you about me getting shat on at this
I'll
party.
tell you.
Yeah, but so that did bug me a little bit just because that happens in a couple other stories here. But I mean, narratively, outside of that, and that's just in the first few pages, it's great, and I love it as a piece of science fiction.
Tyson, I think this is one of the best body horror.
Yes.
pieces.
Oh yeah.
Because the idea, like trypophobia is a real thing, and
You hate it.
I hate it,
Which
is the fear of like little tiny holes all over your skin, or tiny holes in
Indentations.
general.
Yeah.
And I didn't actually know that was a real thing until like the internet, and then it started taking off online. And so 10 years ago when I read this, I remember just being like really grossed out about this story, just the idea of these like little holes with eyes like appearing on your skin. And now rereading this with knowing what trypophobia and all it is, and it's like just one thing that I can never shake. Like I've tried to like, there's some fears that I've had in the past that you could ever like overcome, but like just this bizarre feeling of like the little holes, and just a lot of people say that fear is this feeling of like you're going to fall into it, or you're going to be it's like the minute you're going to be trapped, or it's that terror of just the being tripped into something that you don't really know, like a portal of sorts. I don't really feel it with the tiny holes. I think it's more of just the idea of just seeing like little like things. It's like pockets.
Something
it's
erupt on you.
gross.
Yeah.
Yeah. But with this, I can only imagine this story sets those triggers off big time, because they are portals and they're going to these. It's just basically surveillance, which made me wonder if Under the Dome isn't somewhat tied to this, because they are aliens looking in that this whole time. Spoiler alert.
Man, I never thought about that. That's super cool, actually. Yeah, that had
It's
not
a
occurred to me.
reach, but he doesn't do a lot of alien stuff.
No,
So-
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm very, and I think there's something really freaky to me in terms of sci-fi horror. Like the idea of going to space and bringing something back with you is a very spooky idea to me.
Yeah, and he doesn't even go. I mean, you can't go on Venus because it's mostly gas. He doesn't even like go into it, right? It's just the idea that by passing it, something gets inside. And I remember too, one of the lines. I've never done anything with. I adapted this into a short play a long time ago that it's never been produced. But so I poured over this text pretty intensely at one point. And the line that always really struck me and still creeps me out is he talks about the planet as feeling like orbiting a haunted house floating in space, and that just always freaked me out. Like just that, once again, the cosmic horror type thing.
You know what this story reminded me of? I know at least two people at the table will get this reference. Is one of my favorite episodes of Doctor Who, The Waters of Mars, which is the premise there. Whatever the Doctor is in his blue box and he lands, and that's the least important part of it until you get to the end. But the monster there is in the water. That there's this water that they're supposed to be filtering, but there is a tiny hole or flaw in the filtration, and slowly, because water has patience and water can wait, it transforms these astronauts who are on Mars into these vessels for this malevolent force that's basically just water. So it's people, their skin gets kind of dry and cracked like mud, and water just leaks out of them. Ugh. But if even a little drop touches you, you're done for. And gradually they realize that they're all going to have to just kill themselves. They can't escape. And what actually happens, I won't spoil for you, because the ending is actually far more tragic even than that. But the idea that you go somewhere unknown for the purposes of discovery, but then you too are discovered, and the repercussions of that.
Absolutely.
That's great.
I just really love this story.
Well, and I think it hits hard today. I mean, with like the idea of the Patriot Act and everything, like everybody just uses. I mean, like look at I have tape that's over my on my camera on my laptop, so. Good luck, constant listeners. But there's that fear that we're.
Do you really have
always being
tape over
watched.
your-
Yeah, I do.
Yeah.
I learned it from Mr. Robot, Sam Ishmael.
Auteur.
No, the auteur. But I think that's a constant fear that we have now, is that we're constantly we're always being watched. We are vessels to being shown this. It's I don't think it's conspiracy to think that everything's being recorded, that everything can be heard. I don't think that it's beyond reason. So I think that
honestly, I think we're being recorded right now.
Dean Koontz is listening in. He's like, why don't they do a podcast about me?
He's sitting there just like he's sitting in the white van outside listening to us.
He's like, I think you should do something on Watchers.
Like, Evil Corpse listening in right now.
Evil Corpse. Are they? But I think it takes on a different level of horror when you actually think of it in that realm. I mean, there's that line right here. It's like on page 110 on the Anchor Books edition.
Shout out Anchor Books. By the way.
Enough feedback to feel their blind hate, but still they watched. Their flesh was embedded in my own. I began to realize that they were using me, actually manipulating me. And I mean, I think that takes on a new meaning today when.
So it's an intense sci-fi thriller to give you like the poster version.
Yeah.
However, the only thing that kind of I guess
rankles you.
Rankles me? Sure, we'll use rankles. Is the lasers shooting out of his hands?
Yeah.
I just kept kind of picturing him kind of like giving like this intense expression and like pew 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 pew.
Wait, is that how he blows up the kid's head? I thought he just flicks his hand and it blows up.
I just
He
feel
just
like
shoots
he's like
lasers.
making like a big presentation. That's how I view it happening. I guess
You're right, because he kills the kid, and I
Just like
think
a Heil Hitler? Or
doesn't he kill the kid and then he shoots lasers and like a thunderstorm happens or something?
Yeah,
like
yeah,
that.
that also happens too. Yeah.
I also too. I know I keep bringing up this theme, but this is another story that I think could be related to the apocalypse coming to Earth. And once again, I think if he's able to, I think this guy does kill himself to stop it from spreading. But we're once again left at the possible beginnings of an outside force taking over, as with trucks and gray
It
matter.
could be like the thing where it just spreads to another person.
Yeah, just freaky.
You know, one of the things that I think is interesting is that all of this is a valid and compelling interpretation, but you could also just think it's like cancer.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Like your cells going to war with the rest of your body. There's something inside you that's fighting every decent, normal, healthy impulse that you have for survival. And I like, how often does a story that also has moments that are kind of shitty, like the laser hands, manage to work on so many levels? Like you can think about just the central concept of this story and interpret it in any number of ways.
Well, it's true. I mean, if you've got cancer in your brain, you remove a part of that brain, doesn't mean that you're not going to the cancer didn't spread already. So that's what you're saying. Like, just because he cuts off his hands.
Or Phineas Gage.
Doesn't mean a thing.
Anyone?
I love
Phineas Gage fans?
I wanted to write a whole play about Phineas
It's
Gage once
fascinating.
upon a time.
Do you guys,
Phineas Gage, a pipe went through his head.
Railroad spike.
A
Oh,
railroad
I've heard
spike
about
went through
this,
his head,
yeah.
and it punctured his prefrontal cortex and basically of his brain. But he lived and survived later on. But his whole personality changed.
He
and that,
became violent.
yeah, he went from being a
weird.
nice,
Ugh.
mild-mannered dude to becoming like a violent asshole, and it was kind of where that led to a lot of studies that the prefrontal cortex, like that was what kind of determined your personality in a lot of ways, and it was that the brain does control personality.
That reminds me of a little story in Body Bags with Mark
Oh,
Hamill,
God.
in which he gets a new eye and becomes a crazy maniac.
What is Body Bags?
It's an
Awful movie.
It's an anthology horror film hosted by, I think, John Carpenter as like the
As
creeper.
a spooky mortician.
It's directed by Pastor Prime, John Carpenter, and Pastor Prime, Toby Hooper.
I think the important thing is really that I was 100% convinced in every fiber of my being that you were going to say Boxcar Children and not Body Bags, and that would have really been special.
It's funny you bring that up because it does remind me of Boxcar Racers video
Which, hey,
with
Tom DeLonge, who loves aliens.
sci-fi
He thinks
UFOs.
aliens exist, and I agree with him.
It all connects. The world is ending, and frankly, I Am the Doorway is a great story. But once we move beyond the doorway, I see corn. I see a field. I see wheat, and I see children in the corn, or maybe of the corn.
Oh, boy.
And that leads us to our number 8 best story in Night Shift. Sorry.
That's great.
Which is
These walks are getting longer and longer.
I know, I'm sorry.
that was
Okay,
great.
it's Children of the Corn, which I think is probably the most
Infamous.
well, it's just that it spawned an entire film series that has nothing almost to do with the story itself, which I think has obfuscated the story to a degree when the story itself is pretty
great.
wonderful.
It's yeah, it's funny because the version I currently have at my house of Night Shift, I don't remember where I got it. What is the like 1987 or whatever it is tie-in Children of the Corn version? And you know that image of like the kid with the slightly bent elbow with the sickle just I think has become associated with it because the movie. I mean, it's absurd how many of them there are. Right?
Yeah.
You know. And like you said, it's a shame because this is one of my favorite stories in here, and I think it works so well because I think a common flaw we've all brought up amongst all these stories is the reveal of information. Night Shift, as great as it is, it's a lot of characters relying on monologues, these kind of ham-fisted memories to reveal things. What I love about Children of the Corn, we'll talk about this more in the adaptation episode because none of the movies do this, is that it's this young bickering couple driving across country to try and save their marriage. They go past this town called Gatlin, Nebraska. This kid runs out of the corn with a slit throat, and they accidentally hit him. And they're trying to do the right thing by turning him to the authorities. And they, of course, stumble across this town where all the children have murdered the adults in the name of this deity called He Who Walks Behind the Rows, which is essentially a paganistic take on Christianity as it relates to corn in Nebraska. Now, that sounds like a lot, but the beauty of this story is that it unfolds bit by bit. The main character, Bert, he's finding clues. He finds a church with a Jesus that has, like, corn as hair and is green and is smiling. He finds these diary entries. Like, it unfolds in this way that's so chilling, and by the time he realizes what happened in this town and what is really going on, it's too late. And that's something that none of the movies do, obviously. They show right off the bat all the kids massacring the adults. And, I think, Randall, what you said is right on point. Like, this story, because of its kind of silly title and these movies, it's really gotten underrated, I think. Yeah. But it is so creepy, and I think out of all the stories in Night Shift, it's my favorite in terms of how King reveals everything.
Well, this is why there are so many sequels and whatever. It's because if you look at the actual, like, story itself, it comprises of the first 25 minutes of a horror.
Exactly.
It's they get to the town and it's pretty much done.
Yeah.
Like, it's like they have, they get to the town, he goes into the church, and once he comes out, they've already, like, taken the wife.
She gets killed.
She gets killed, and then he, like, runs around for a little bit, but he's gone in within moments also. So it's really like it's what I love about it, that I can see a lot of people seeing as infuriating when they read the story, is that we're so attuned to these stories of just, like, the coming into this strange abandoned town and thinking that that's the beginning. But really the story is just this, is that journey into the town, and then the town just kills them, like, immediately. So it's like you were expecting this further, this further massacre with all the kids, or even longer story there,
or them surviving, whatever,
surviving and stuff. But it just takes that off immediately.
And that's what's so frightening. They're just like, no, these idiots wandered through, and it does that thing that even The Departed does this. Not always, but sometimes I'm a big fan of in stories where they just kill the point of view characters we've been with the whole time, and it suddenly just shifts to the villains, and we see how the villains operate. Story ends, and I love that.
Well, it's like, in a weird way, this reminds me of Battleground that we discussed in the last episode, which was about toy soldiers becoming sentient and killing this man. And because I think the idea is that, the implication is that, these are a bunch of kids. It's easy to overcome them.
He even says how the fighting style is not, like, advanced. It's just kids.
It's just that there's so many of them. And then clearly they're, they have a certain bloodlust because it's rooted in faith or religion, whatever it is that they worship. And, when, one of the scariest scenes in the entirety of Night Shift for me is when the guy stumbles into a clearing and sees his wife's body with corn husks stabbed in her eye holes, That shit's horrifying.
I mean, for me, listen, it's got the three things that horrify me. You got the 3 C's. Children, terrifying. Cults, love them, but they're terrifying. And corn.
I thought he hates veggies.
You mentioned crucifixion.
Oh, I'm all for crucifixion.
He hates vegetables.
I love crucifixion.
You do hate vegetables.
But I do hate vegetables, to be absolutely fair.
I don't know.
It's fine. Yeah. It's fine. Actually, I don't mind corn, to be honest with you. I just want to make my little joke.
Kind of
but I think...
It just goes right through.
Also, corn starts with a K, by the way.
Oh, something is happening to me.
You're in timeout.
The thing about this is also, I think we're grown so accustomed to Children of the Corn being all about those creepy children.
Yeah.
But again, this story, they don't pop up until the very, very end.
Yeah.
Isaac is literally on the last 2 pages.
Yes.
He's the main villain.
And there's a power in not knowing what's going on at all.
Have any of you read Suddenly Last Summer or seen the film, which is a slightly tamer adaptation?
I don't think so.
So it's this: if you like Children of the Corn, you should try Suddenly Last Summer, which is a Tennessee Williams play. It's Southern Gothic, feels vaguely romantic. There's a tortured heroine, and you think, oh, this is going someplace dark, but then all of a sudden there are fucking cannibal children.
Ooh.
You just don't see it coming, and it is the best and very creepy. And everyone should read it. It would only be creepier if it was happening in a cornfield.
I will definitely check that out.
What if he took off of that then? Like,
he may have. I mean, I feel like most early Stephen King works really do riff on something already existing.
It's not religious at all.
Yeah.
So I think it's more just that murderous children are terrifying,
Yeah.
and that's a
Yes.
universal truth that we all acknowledge.
Yeah.
Because in this case, it's driven by sex and
Yeah,
Okay.
or even like Village of the Damned. You know,
Oh,
where,
oh,
like,
very
That's
absolutely.
rip.
The cuckoo.
yeah. And like another thing too, throwing in the King's Dominion again. I believe that Gatlin is neighboring to Hemingford Home.
Yeah.
Also, there's another
I have-
creeper that
I know
likes
what you're
to
gonna say.
creep in the corn, and we're gonna cover that in the stand. But
Well, I was reading The Guardian was doing King Revisited.
Oh,
one of their
I
writers
read
was.
those,
Yeah,
yeah.
and those were great. I was rereading the one on Night Shift, and the guy was talking about connecting Children of the Corn to the stand, and what he said was, he goes, now bear with me because he knows this is a little bit much, but he said Randall Flagg's most common pseudonym is Walter O'Dim. And then he says, he who walks behind the rose is a name given by the children, and it just so happens to include all the letters of the name Walter in order.
Really?
And then also with the corn
Interesting.
connection from,
Well-
and the fact that it's near Hemingford Home, I think that, obviously when he wrote it, I don't think he was thinking about it, but it's a fun sort of
That-
thing.
that's-
I mean,
but-
this is around the time when he was putting
Yeah.
together the pieces for Stan, though.
That's something I
There's
do
a night
wonder.
surf there.
Because I did, when
Yeah, that's
looking
a
up
good
this
point.
story, upon rereading it, I found a lot of like Stephen King wikis that just kind of said, "Oh yeah, he who walks behind the rose is Randall Flagg," but there was no confirmation of it. But it was creepy to me in a weird way, though. I know this sounds funny saying this about Randall Flagg. He who walks behind the rose almost feels more animalistic and malicious than
I
Randall
agree
Flagg.
100%,
Like
yeah.
Randall Flagg has no problem killing kids or adults, but there's something more calculated in what he does, and I got the idea that he who walks behind the rose is more of like
This
more
is
of an
like-
animal or
This
a
is
demon.
sacrificial.
Yeah,
and that's not
exactly.
really Randall
That's not his
Flagg's
style.
I mean,
that's not his
Flag
style.
likes to just kind of step forward and be in the middle of everything going on to begin with. He's not
Yeah.
necessarily always.
Yeah.
He's a
the puppet
manipulator.
master.
Yeah,
But another
sorry,
strength here also I want to really point out is the fact that, with the exception of Isaac, who I guess is kind of an older teen, none of the kids talk. None of the kids have any like cute dialogue, saying, "Oh, hey, daddy, we're gonna get you, mommy," that type of thing. And there's a strength in the silence of these characters that could have easily been broken if they had uttered anything, in my opinion.
yeah. The one kid just does the throat slit gesture and then gets
That's
killed.
it, yeah.
One thing I just want to make sure we touch on before we move on to the next story is that what I love about Children of the Corn is that creepy corn kids or whatever else, but Stephen King, if you put the pieces of the story together, he really does set up a pretty specific religious belief, as horrifying as it is. And I think it does sort of play to this idea what happens when fanaticism goes wrong. Like if you're these kids in this town and you're raised to be these fundamentalist Christians, and that's like what is instilled in your brain from a very young age, and you see that there's this drought of corn all of a sudden. It kind of makes sense that they do what they do. I mean, it's very extreme, but like they take it and they think that this will help things be fertile and help their community, and then they take all this imagery, this Christian imagery of the Old Testament, right? Because they rip out the New Testament, and they twist it into this like pagan sort of imagery, which anyone who's studied the Bible or just religion in general knows that it's a pretty thin line between paganism, like pagan imagery and Christian imagery.
Yeah.
And it's very well thought out as far as being a religion goes. I mean, I think that once again, those movies make it so crazy and silly. But one of my favorite things is that you're like, no, Stephen King really took the time to plot out why these kids did what they did, what exactly they believe, how that affects the community they currently have, and of course how it affects anyone who stumbles into it.
Yeah, and I think it just says something, like you're saying, just about the idea of how easy it is to manipulate scripture to suit, whatever it is that is deep in your heart, I mean, that's sort of the thing about how, religion in any sort of way can be perverted is just the sense of that, when you're dealing with a text that, it's very, just the way that we interpret literature in a million different ways. People interpret scripture and they interpret, religious ideals like in such specific ways that you can almost create a new religion out of it and still say that you are worshiping whatever this God is.
I thought it was pretty cool that he decided to wire in Sherlock Holmes into his main character, who was able to reduce the entire goddamn mystery.
all right.
Within a few flips of the pages. I was like, when he was going through the dates, I kept going back, going like, Like, I felt like an idiot. I was just like, wait, where is he coming up with these
What if he did name the character Holmes?
It would maybe be cool, and I still do praise its reveal of information. But once he gets that final step, it would still be cool if like we're left to deduce that, not him.
Yeah,
you know, he's just kind of what's going on here.
Yeah.
Because he does have that line about like.
literally has
Oh,
10
maybe
minutes he's in there.
maybe this person did this. Oh, and then maybe your little buddies helped you, and then I bet what happened is blah blah blah.
I mean, he sees a bunch of dates and he deduces that it's the parents were killed in this part. There only had to be, which by the way, 19 is
I didn't even realize.
Yeah, that's a good point.
There's the number again, but that just again it goes into that whole thing where it's very perfunctory. Like I hate using that word all the time, but that like right when I got to that, I was just like, oh god, like it's just so simple. Like it's so easy. It doesn't. There's no work that involved into getting that knowledge. It's just like, oh, a book. Maybe I'm the greatest accountant in the world. I'm gonna deduce that.
Mike hated Children of the Corn. Apparently.
No, I didn't hate it. I like it. That was the only part that I thought that was.
That's the only. Yeah.
He's rushed. Have you ever? I mean, I can't even go somewhere with my wife sometimes without like being like, all right, we're almost out of here. Like and she's screaming outside, like, can we go? And you're gonna like have that in your head, and you're.
I mean, he does hate her though.
They established that they're both like pretty awful people.
Yeah,
they're
pretty shitty.
Yeah, no,
man,
but
there's
like,
so many shitty characters in this. In
Night Shift. Yeah.
But there's a lot going on for him to solve this in his head. Like,
No, that's true.
That was my
There's
point.
also like a demon in the corn, you know. I don't know.
Yeah, no, I get it, but
Final thoughts on Children of the Corn. Anybody?
Can we play the corn? There is a corn song called "Children of the Corn." That
Is there really? Oh, I didn't know that.
Featuring Ice Cube.
Oh dear, we're moving on. Well, we're gonna move on from the open prairies and the pastures of the wheat fields to just a single room, and in that room is a woman. The woman in the room. That is our number 7 story in our top
number
10.
7.
The lucky,
unlucky,
with an unlucky ending. Yeah,
We're gonna keep this as lighthearted as humanly
yeah.
possible.
This is
It's a tough one.
This is, I think we all agree, this is one of the 2 dramas that's found in Night Shift. This and we'll be talking about the last rung on the ladder later on.
No supernatural elements.
No supernatural.
No genre elements even.
Really, it's just a straightforward human drama, and both done exceptionally well, in my opinion. This one has to do with a man who has to decide whether or not to end the life of his mother, who is, slowly fading away in the hospital. She's in pain all the time, and that's really just the main thrust of the short story. I mean, there's no crazy twist that really happens. It's about this person trying to figure out, can I end my mother, even if it means ending her pain? Can I do it?
Yeah, and King said that this was his way of working through his mother's death, was writing this story. So obviously I think that there's a lot of heart to this story, and there's a lot of reverence to this story. I think he wasn't trying to make something that was exploitive or nasty or mean. Like, this is a really heartfelt story about how hard it is to lose somebody, and how this is almost the inverse of the idea of like trying to bring someone back from the dead, like we talked about, like with Pet Sematary, but then also we talked about it with Sometimes They Come Back. That idea of trying to bring somebody back from the dead inevitably, kind of can ruin the idea, the person, the spirit, whatever. And here it's sort of like maybe you can better preserve the person that you knew by relieving their pain.
Yeah, it's great.
Yeah. I mean, thinking about, I read this for the first time, I guess, about 20 years ago. Probably 14, 15 years old at the time, and was very moved throughout the entire the story. It's a very sad story about, again, this man's losing his mother to the worst disease you can have. And so I loved it then, and then, not to get too sad and personal here, but my mother passed away from cancer about 10 years after I read this. And so much of it was the same. You would walk, Mac, you can probably speak to this too, obviously. I mean, you can walk into the room and, your mother's lying there in pain, but there's nothing you can really do about it. And they describe that feeling of helplessness so well in this. So well. About feeling, just not being able to do anything and having that helpless, I keep repeating it, but that's just the ultimate feeling you keep feeling over and over again. My mother's in pain, there's nothing I can do. And so then, now reading it again, obviously I've got a whole new perspective of it, and how he nails it is really, it's incredible to me. How well he nails the whole feeling.
And I totally agree. And reading this one was hard. I mean, obviously the outcome is different from our outcome, but I will say it definitely hit me really really hard. I think I actually didn't like it at first because I feel like it was kind of putting me in a place I didn't want to be. But then you step away from it and you go, oh wow, it's actually a really beautiful story, and, and it's a really tough one.
I was gonna say, I mean, it for you guys more so than the rest of us because it's literally like an exact thing. I mean, not the suicide part, but yeah. It's something you've been through, and it's a hard place to go to, of course. But then I think that's the beauty of fiction, you know, like you and Stephen King. Did he lose his mom to cancer also, stomach cancer, or was it? I don't know.
I'm not sure what exactly.
Either way, it's kind of this thing. Like he's a writer and he has this experience that happens to be very similar to your guys' experience, and I think the fact that he can create this tale that can bring you to that like very unsettling place is just like a testament to the power of literature and something that we forget sometimes. I remember Mike was talking about not this story, but Last Rung on the Ladder being like one of the first Stephen King outings that felt like literature, like high art literature, and the woman in the room very much feels like that to me. And it's so he gets the medical details so right, and something that I've not lost a close relative to cancer, but you know, I've lost relatives to other things and have a one right now that's going through some stuff. And something that was really both disturbing but also sort of made me feel better in this story is that a lot of these glimmers of hope with the mom, like, oh, she had this look in her eye, or she did this or whatever, and it's this in the best world you would think, oh cool, that means she's getting better, that means this. And of course the reality, when you have a disease that bad, they're not. It's just like this kind of, you know, slight
wishful thinking almost.
Exactly, yeah. It's like this sliver of them breaking through this thing that they're not anymore, and he does such a good job of that. And it's so heartbreaking to see the narrator dealing with that. And I just love what's that last line about he helps his mom, he helps, and I ultimately think it's a
I've got this here, yeah.
Read that.
It's after beautiful. He gives her the pills one by one, and so he says, he starts out of the room and thinks of something else. He goes back to her side, takes the bottle out of the box and rubs it all over his shirt. Then he presses the limp fingertips of her sleeping left hand on the bottle. Then he puts it back and goes out of the room quickly without looking back. He goes home and waits for the phone to ring and wishes he had given her another kiss. While he waits, he watches TV and drinks a lot of water. Just
great, man. And it's not like, you know, it's not going over any sort of wave of tragedy washing over him. It's not even giving him catharsis, really. It's just kind of like, this happened, and yeah, hopefully he can get to the point where he gets over, or not gets over it, but can deal with it. But I love that the ending just in that moment is like, all right, I did this, I'm just going to sit here now. You know?
And wait.
Yeah, and you know, it's interesting. This is one of the 4 stories that was previously unpublished because, you know, and I think that's sort of the benefit of Night Shift and having a short story collection put out under your own name, because, you know, this isn't the kind of story you can publish in a men's magazine, you know?
between jerking off.
Yeah, like this isn't like a cavalier kind of story, you know? So it's like
this isn't Graveyard Shift.
Yeah, so it's like it's neat that he had, and you know, Last Rung of the Ladder was also previously unpublished, and I guess what I appreciate about Night Shift is that, you know, he was able to also use this book as a means to show the world this different side of his writing.
I just have a point to this though. The thing that it does do a disservice to is that there are an expectation that are tied to these stories.
Yeah,
and there are certain. You want to talk about Chekhov's gun? There is a Chekhov's gun in this story, and there's a line that's on page 501 of the Anchor Books edition. I'm just always saying that again.
Mike is a representative of
but
Anchor Books.
there is a, and again, it's unfortunate that this line's in here, because for me, that I hadn't read this story in a while. Like it had been
a while,
ages since I read it. So like I just, you know, there's a line here that says, his mother is paranoid about a great many things lately, and has once told him a man sometimes hides under her bed in the late at night. Like, part of it is the combination of drugs they're trying on her. Now, we know that that's just the mild delusions that she's having and the things. But when it's in a book that's filled with vampires,
that's a good point.
Ghosts, like the aliens, everything. There is an expectation. Boogeyman. There is an expectation of where is it going with that, and I think I think that while it doesn't, like, when you actually read it as the story separate and removed from Night Shift, it doesn't matter. But in that, it did seem kind of distracting to me.
I think that's right. I think it comes down to just your preconceived notions of King, which makes perfect sense at this
Yeah,
point because
of course,
all he's
yeah.
done is horror. But I don't think it's necessary. I mean, personally, when I was reading, I wasn't thinking, "Oh, this is going to be like a boogeyman."
No,
under the bed or anything like that.
I didn't
And
think.
but I don't think he was even deliberate. Like, I'm going to put this in here to throw people off.
It's the headline.
Do you think that was what he
But
was
that's my wonder. Is that, like, why is that? Because the line doesn't really do much other than show like.
just from personal experience, I mean, when the body's going, the what's real and what isn't really starts to amp up in ways that are really uncomfortable. And I think that's what he's just trying to show, that she doesn't even really know what's happening anymore either. So
Yeah.
I think that's all that was really trying to.
Yeah, no, I definitely agree.
Yeah.
I just think that when you have it in, like, surrounded by all these other stories,
Yeah,
it does.
and it's the
seem-
last one too. I see,
And it's
what
the
you're saying.
After
Like, I was
you've-
like, oh, where is he going to go?
After you've
with
read
this?
the Boogeyman and
Yeah,
and the vampire,
and
yeah.
stuff,
And yeah, so.
yeah.
Yeah.
You know, that line actually really resonated with me, and I think, again, personal experience shaping the way you respond to
Yeah.
literature.
Yeah.
Because in my very small family, we have lost a large number of people to terminal illness, mostly cancer, but also Alzheimer's. And one of them was suffering from brain cancer, which has a, like, obviously very different but not dissimilar effect. And there's this thing, the awful things in your life that creep up on you in dark moments that you can't shake. My grandmother, who had Alzheimer's and dementia, near the end of her life, almost had to have a finger amputated because she took to nervously, when she got scared, rubbing her thumb on her finger.
Yeah.
To the point when she rubbed it so raw that it became infected in the finger. Right?
God.
And I would think about her or about my Aunt Sue or about my grandpa in these moments when they were medicated and terrified, and the things they would be afraid. My grandpa would be afraid of my grandmother.
Yeah.
My Aunt Sue would get scared of pretty much everything, because when you're so ill, everything becomes an external threat.
Yeah.
And I also find this story very moving, and I think the fact that the monster under the bed is just like
Cancer.
mortality, like
Yeah,
it's just
cancer,
cancer,
yeah.
is one of the things that makes it so effective. But it's interesting to hear that perspective, because of course if you don't know what's coming and you're reading this collection, it makes sense that you would have a different
It's
expectation.
the context versus
Yeah, like
content,
I didn't think that there was ever like, and it was actually going to turn into a monster story. I just think that you can convey that idea,
Sure.
because like, I mean, like, because yeah, like my aunt, like she would say that she talked to somebody that had been dead for 30 years, that, and as a kid I used to think, like, oh my god, like maybe you saw a ghost. My dad would be like, you're an idiot, like, but I just think the image of something under the bed is just so tied to the monsters under the bed. It just I don't know, that was the only thing. Other than that, I thought this was an absolutely moving story, and I do think that while I do wish it was the penultimate instead of the closing.
I do too. Yeah.
I think that it definitely hits at a certain level that's very becoming of King at this point in his life.
What would you want the closing story to be?
I think One for the Road.
One for the road.
It's
Just
bookend.
doing that bookend thing,
Yeah,
I think
for Salem's
would have been cool.
No, I agree with you. I understand where you're coming from, because when I read it, I did think, this is like, she's on a lot of medication. This is things that she's seeing, and it's really sad, especially when you've experienced something like that with someone that's having those issues. However, to your point, this was a story written for Night Shift.
Yeah.
So I understand where you're coming from. If this, and the good thing is that this comes after stories like The Last Rung on the Ladder. So I was able to start viewing stories from a different perspective, and maybe this isn't going to be horror. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
In that kind of horror.
Oh, totally.
So yeah.
I was reminded of Farewell to Arms, the Hemingway book, especially with the title of Woman in the Room, just because, at the end of, spoiler alert for a almost 100-year-old book, it's like, Farewell to Arms, like at the end, his wife passes away in childbirth, and he doesn't put her away, but it's like the sense of the level of connect, like there is it's not as sentimental, there is a darkness and there is a sense of numbness that is shown here, and just calling it the woman in the room instead of like my mother. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's like it's that, you know, once the soul leaves or whatever, it is just a woman in the room, and there is something really tragic about that. There's something really sad about that, and I was very much, and you know, like those final words of Farewell to Arms are some of the most devastating that I've ever read, and I feel like King was maybe inspired by that a little bit when he finished writing Woman in the Room. So
I mean, it goes back to what you were saying, Randall. It's the title, The Woman in the Room, because it's about him trying to detach himself as much as possible from what he's about to do. He just treats her as just a human as opposed to his mother and what he has to do. And then you look at the format of the story. There are no quotation marks around dialogue at all. Yeah. It's very like Cormac McCarthy-esque in that regard.
I didn't notice that.
It's almost like a timeless narrative, because one sentence will be halfway done and it'll pick up in another scenario.
Which
it's
he
very
does
dreamlike in a way too in that regard.
And he ends up doing that in It and a few other books.
Yeah, especially
too.
the conclusion of It.
It is weird that it's not in the first person.
Yeah, it's
very
I think it's
detached.
As much as I love the whole collection here, there are a few stories that I think really do show just a leap forward for King. And like you guys said, because this was written for, I mean, it was more of the more recent stories here, but yeah, this is an instance that I think like predicts both content-wise some of the non-supernatural things King would be interested in, but also like some of those structure flourishes.
And would be to like what different seasons that he's.
Well, I was thinking the body would be that,
Yeah.
and then even further along in the supernatural story, the relationship between him and his mother is very similar to Lizzie and her husband and Lizzie's story in terms of how, of dealing with somebody that you love. It's a different type of love, obviously, but it's
who's dying.
And I think that he captured it very well here, and it's a precursor to what was to come.
Yeah, it's a good story. It's No, I'm serious.
Yeah,
like,
work your pun out of this one, Randall. We just
I know. I was sitting there like, where am I going to go? And I'm just going to say this.
Yeah.
There's the woman in the room, and then there's the window, and we climb out the window, and we find ourselves on the ledge.
Oh man.
And so now that leads us to our number 6 story. It's a little story called The Ledge.
You want to talk about some Pulp Fiction? Here.
I love it. I love it.
This is. It doesn't get tighter. It's a tighter storytelling than this. This was published in 1976 in Penthouse magazine, and this is a Penthouse story. I mean, this is a story about masculinity, cuckolding, forbidden love, emasculation.
Rich
one
assholes.
of my favorite fetishes, findom.
Findom?
Which is financial.
Financial domination.
This has got it all. We got a tennis hunk who falls in love with a mobster's wife and is blackmailed into walking around a skyscraper. Which is that's it. That's the story.
It's funny that you mentioned Pulp Fiction. I mean, this is totally exactly like a vignette you would see in Pulp Fiction, which isn't something that came to me, but like the tone. I mean, there's some grisly things that happen, obviously, with the wife getting killed and everything like that. But I mean, it is a pretty fun story.
No, you know what Tarantino it would be in? It would be in 4 Rooms.
Yes. Oh, yes, that's right. Yeah.
I would watch the shit out of that.
Yeah.
Only it would be Tim Roth. And
Going up.
Yes.
Great. It's so fun. I love it.
This is
going down.
So of its era.
Yeah.
The muscular storytelling. I mean, there's so little fat. It gets to the point. It executes without even like thinking of how ludicrous any of this is. And you got Stan Norris, who is a James Caan, like he's a champ. He's a I just see 73 era James Caan in this role. I don't see the guy from Airplane that they got in the.
Wait, did we explain what exactly happens here?
Okay, so
in the story.
Given the circumstances of the deal,
Stan Norris is the tennis pro that works at the country club. Falls in love with this woman who happens to be married
to a gangster.
A gangster, a guy named Kressner, and the story opens right up with them, talking about the deal.
And Kressner, they make him so smart.
He's
You hate him. I love it, man.
I love it.
Picture like 90s era Trump, and then you'll have a really good time with this story.
Absolutely.
And
So that's all I got.
Basically, Kressner blackmails this guy, saying like, "Look, I got I know that I got $20,000 that we'll give to you, but you got this heroin. You got like $20,000 of heroin that's in the car that he's parked downstairs, and he's gonna call the cops. and report him, and he's going to get like 20-something years or 40-something years in jail. And basically he keeps threatening him, saying like, you're not going to get my wife because she'll be an old woman by the time you get out. And it's just like that sort of like, it's so emasculating in the sense that just like oh, I'm not going to be with this woman I love and all this other stuff. This guy's holding it all above me. And so he basically forces this guy, saying like, it's not a bet. It's a wager.
If he walks around the ledge, if he can make it around the ledge successfully, they'll remove the heroin from the car. They'll let him. They use the language, "I'll let you be with my wife," which comes into play later.
And
go
tall
away with
is the building? It's a ledge of a building.
It's
very
tall.
Penthouse.
It's a high roof.
It's like 60 stories, maybe long.
But it's also he also offers him like $20,000 just to leave entirely, right?
No, I think he makes him. I think it's like if you either do this walk around the ledge, and you get to go away with my wife, or you.
And here's a great description of this Kressner guy. He was wearing a silk dressing gown on which a dragon was embroidered. His eyes were calm and intelligent behind his glasses. He looked just like what he was, an A number 1 500 carat dyed in the wool son of a bitch. I loved his wife, and she loved me. I had expected him to make trouble, and I knew this was it. But I just wasn't sure what brand it was. I mean, that's a synopsis.
That's great, and that's such a King like insult thing. Like, oh, you A-grade son of a bitch.
Oh, you son of a bitch.
I do like too how they treat Norris. Like, they don't make Norris this perfect. Like, he's kind of he's very similar to Bruce Willis in Pulp Fiction. He's this washed up kind of tennis pro, and he actually has a history of breaking and entering. Like, he's not a great guy.
Yeah,
I
like when he talks about how he's like, I'm sort of at the end of my career as a tennis pro.
What have I got to lose?
What else am I going to do with my life? Yeah. So he basically has to walk the ledge around this building, and they're very high up in the air.
It's 5 inches, the ledge?
Yeah, it's only 5 inches.
It's 5 inches long.
His heel always is hanging off over the edge of it, which is so scary to me. And also and I love the idea that, like, the fact that he's a tennis pro works into it because he's got, like, really strong legs.
He's got good ankles.
Yeah, he's got good ankles,
Yeah, I don't have a fear of heights, but I do have a fear of stepping outside with only, 5 inches to stand on. Yeah. So I feel like even if you're not, anybody that reads this is going to be
I have a fear
on
of
the edge of the ledge.
Oh, and there's also the idea that it's freezing outside.
Pigeons?
They stress out that there are pigeons. It is like an old NES game that he just keeps on raising the difficulty on everything. And he paints this like portrait or just paints the whole setting so well, because there's like one side that's going to have more wind. There's one side that has the pigeons. There's one side where he's actually able to keep teasing him and goading him with like psychological warfare, and he's able to I think at one point he has like a New Year's popper thing that he plays.
Yeah, it's like cranker, like a New Year's cranker.
That scared the hell out of me that moment. Yeah. Like when he popped out of the window, because I'm just like, how is he hanging on?
Yeah, it's absolutely terrifying. I don't think I could have made it.
No.
Yeah.
I wouldn't have made it.
Personally, I don't think I could have done it. But the thing that's most terrifying in this story to me is the passage of time.
Yes.
You don't really realize just how long he's out there, and then all of a sudden, like, they'll just drop a little line in there, and
he sees the bank clock, right?
Half an hour.
There's this looming bank clock, and it starts when he's like in like 8 o'clock, like close to 9. And he doesn't finish until like almost like 11:30 or something.
Yeah, and there's probably the most horrifying part is where he gets to take a little break.
Yeah,
there's a little indentation somewhere where he can like kind of.
Well, he goes to
the
there's a balcony on the other opposite end, and he like climbs up and lays down, but he can't stay there too long because his muscles will start to like seize up.
And like, how do you get back out on that ledge after getting onto that other balcony? So it's like even more. It's like, God, I wish that wasn't even there for him. I wish he just kept pushing on.
It's such an anxious story.
Yeah,
like, the horror is so organic, like, just to the situation. And, I mean, I think for anyone who's afraid of heights, and even if you're not, but it's like, for me, I'm afraid of heights. So just the idea of, like, the dizziness that would accompany looking down when you're that high, that's so scary.
And they set up the stakes as it goes.
Yeah.
Like, that you already know that this is a bad situation.
Yeah, it's a tall building.
But the stakes even get higher. Like, he goes... on page 293 of the Anchor Books edition. If I lost this match, I wouldn't have to buy the beers and take the ribbing. I'd be so much scarlet sludge splattered for a block of Diekman Street in both directions. When I thought I had it, I looked down. The building sloped away like a smooth chalk cliff to the street far below. The cars parked there looked like those Matchbox models you can buy in the 5 and dime. The ones driving by the building were just tiny pinpoints of light. If you fell that far...
You would have plenty of time to realize just what was happening, to see the wind blowing your clothes as the earth pulled you back faster and faster. You'd have time to scream a long, long scream, and the sound you made when you hit the pavement would be like the sound of an overripe watermelon.
Last night or 2 nights ago, I was walking home, and this was one of the final stories I read, and the apartment building right near where I live, it's not even that tall, it's like 4 stories or something like that. But I looked up at the ledge, and they have like a tiny lip that goes around, and it's about 5 inches. And even that, I was like, ooh, that would be horrifying. Even that's not that high up, but it's still, once you go past 2 stories, I mean, it's enough to kill you.
Well, there's also like some other things that, like, I mean, the pigeons, for example. Like, if we're going to talk about like cemetery stuff, I mean, the gore with the pigeons is really gross. Again, hypochondriac. Like, and the way he describes it is disgusting. Kressner couldn't have conceived of worse torture if he had planned it for 10 years. 1 peck was not so bad. 2 or 3 were a little more. But that damn bird must have pecked me 60 times before I reached the wrought iron railing of the penthouse opposite Kressner's. And before that, he goes, and the pain was getting more intense now. The bird was pecking at raw flesh and eating it for all I know. And like, I mean, and he acknowledges that he's like, I'm gonna have to get it taken care of. He's good. God knows what germs these pigeons have. So it's just like, and that's like already like, I think 70% into the the way. And he describes this great thing about how like he doesn't belong there, and like it's a very the pigeons, like this is the pigeons' territory. So it's this whole like status thing also that's going on here. It's like this guy is just out of his fucking element, and like he has to survive it. And I just love. I mean, the ending's great.
I love the ending. It's so satisfying. It's like one of the few like satisfying endings.
It's also sad though. It's like I'm sad that Kressner kills her.
Yeah, it is kind of, yeah.
I also say that it's one of the only stories where like the bad guy gets it. Right?
Yeah.
I mean, I guess you could say the hotel.
If he doesn't make it, he dies, and if he does, he's going to shoot him.
He's going to get him.
Anyway. What's that line?
So,
he's like, Kressner never welched on a bet. I, however, have been known to.
Yeah, and like I mean, it is great though. Like the thing is though, King depicts the journey and sort of the how much it destroys him to walk that ledge, and it's such like an intense journey that when he makes it, you're like so excited, you're so happy, it's like such a achievement. So then to go in and immediately be like, oh, we killed her anyways. So it's just like, I remember, but that's good, like it's good storytelling, but it just like it deflated me so much that and then it makes sort of him killing Kressner in the end, or like getting his revenge almost kind of empty in a lot of ways.
Yeah, totally. Yeah.
I mean, I just think this is tight as hell. I just think I had so much fun reading this.
Yeah.
And
it's fantastic.
So as we stand out on the ledge, we look out over the city and we see a building with a sign. The sign says Quitters Inc. Our number 5 story in the Night Shift short story collection. I actually think Quitters Inc. is really fascinating. It's a story of a guy who wants to quit smoking, and he gets directed by an old friend to an organization. Is it called Quitters Inc?
Yeah, it's called Quitters Inc. Yeah.
Quitters Inc. That basically helps you quit smoking, and they're like, we won't charge you until you actually do quit. And so, wow, this is too good to be true. But then it turns out that their way of doing it is actually quite violent and terrifying. And actually, some people have compared Quitters Inc. to a Richard Bachman story. And I actually think that is a pretty smart comparison.
It feels like it, yeah.
It's not overtly horror. It kind of exists in a world that's like one step to the left of our own, which I think you can say about a lot of Richard Bachman properties, and it also kind of concerns like the suburban world, like, and I think that's something that's more Bachman than King.
Bachman deals with like businessmen a lot.
Yeah,
King doesn't.
I thought about Thinner a lot on this, in a lot of ways, and we kind of talked about with Gray Matter too the idea of addiction. There it was alcoholism, and here it's smoking, and I think, and I guess what I really like about Quitters Inc. is that it almost seems to support the idea that, sometimes the only way to quit an addiction is to make the stakes so insanely high.
Well, that's what's weird about the book is that Quitters Inc. does, for all intents and purposes, work. Like, it ends up working, and now, like, especially with that last moment where you see the woman's finger missing, of course, these are nefarious methods, but So yeah, in the story, it's essentially they surveil you, and if you smoke so many cigarettes or have so many setbacks, the torture gets progressively worse. So like at first it has this electroshock floor that they put his wife on, and then
and that's the thing is they hurt your family. They don't hurt you.
They threaten to beat his son and all that. And I love the sick little joke of the story is that Quitters Inc. does help this guy quit smoking, but it even helps him. He has a special needs kid.
Yeah.
It even helps him love that kid more, and that's like
he becomes closer to both his kid and his wife,
and he gets in better shape. So
he gets in better shape.
I kind of wish that I was enrolled with Quitters Inc.
But seriously, like honestly, I think that anybody, like I've talked to people who have had addictions before who love this story because there's like I had a friend who was addicted to heroin for a while, and he loves Stephen King, and he joked to me, he's kind of like, man, I would have got off heroin a lot quicker if Quitters Inc. was a real thing.
Yeah.
He's like, if they were actually threatening my family and stuff, then I would have got off this shit a lot quicker, because sometimes you need the stakes to be that high.
Yeah.
And that to me is absolutely fascinating. And another thing that I think establishes this is sort of a Richard Bachman story. If there's one thing that you can say about King's works, it's that they're complex storytelling-wise and character-wise, but they're not often morally complex,
No.
It's usually pretty clear who the good guys and bad guys are in King. And whereas that's not the case with Richard Bachman. I think he actually, even though I like most Bachman books considerably less than I do King, at the same time I will say that, except for The Running Man, that the lines are a lot blurrier.
Yeah, road work especially thinner, definitely.
Road work especially, thinner especially.
Like
and
from Charlie from Rage.
Even Rage, I think Rage is like that too. I mean, that's what he's trying to do.
Yeah.
But it's like, I think that's interesting. And so I think that, there's sort of a morally complex thing here where, one of the things I love about Quitters Inc. is that there isn't sort of this like you would expect like an uprising, like, hey, let's overthrow Quitters Inc. because it's bad,
They love Quitters Inc.
I know, I love that it's like in the end, even though it's nefarious, like it makes people's lives better.
Yeah.
And I think that's complicated.
And it also, I'm not a smoker, but I have heard that, like, I remember in Bob Mould's autobiography, he talks about how quitting smoking was like harder than getting off hard drugs for him. Like smoking was just such a hard thing to quit. And so that I not being an addict myself, I imagine that this book captures that addict's plight so much. And the thing we forget too is that the main character, I mean, he really only has the one misstep, and then seeing his wife on that electroshock floor, that's enough for him to quit cold turkey. And I would suspect that's like probably would be the case for a lot of people trying to quit smoking. Now, will they ever do it through those methods? Of course not. I don't think that would ever be legal. But like, you do wonder about the effectiveness of it. I love that it makes us ask those questions all while being kind of a fun little genre story.
See, I don't know, because for me personally, like I was really into Mountain Dew and Munchkins.
Oh, this is true.
Every morning at work.
Wait, what are Munchkins?
From
Dunkin' Donuts, those little donuts.
Oh,
One of those.
Every
I love
morning,
those.
every
God.
morning at work from Monday through Friday, I get in the office around 8 o'clock. I sit down with my Mountain Dew and my 10 Munchkins from Dunkin' Donuts.
10 Munchkins.
And I just sit there and eat them every morning. And this
Dude,
went
I-
on for about a year or two. So to go back to you, I think if you threatened, for instance, my brother Mac, I think I still would have continued to eat those Munchkins and Mountain Dew. I think
Horrible.
it takes a certain human being to be able to stop. And I don't think Donati or Quitters Inc. would have really convinced me to do that.
And let me just say,
Max
Okay.
fried
Let me
on
just
the
say.
electric floor and Justin keeps popping the Munchkins.
Chocolate,
let me
please.
just say, if I'm dancing on this electric floor and I come out, I'm not going to be like Richard Morrison's wife, where when you tell me what's going on and why it's happening, that I'm going to be like, oh, it's okay, it's okay.
That
But
was a
that
little
was
weird,
the one
yeah.
thing that didn't sit well with me was that
Yeah.
she's actually like really like happy about the situation because she knows like he's really trying to stop smoking. I would have been like, fuck you, man. Like,
How could you stand
are
up for
kidding
this?
me?
Yeah.
First of all, I wouldn't have shown up. I would have been too busy back at home eating my Munchkins and Mountain Dew.
Well, that's on you because the first one is the electric shock of the wife. The second would be to shock you. So that's have fun.
And also, you're a
The
troubled
third
child.
is they would shock both of you. The fourth was to beat the son.
Yeah.
So I got news for you.
We don't have kids, so
Exactly.
that works out.
Did anybody
5.
else kind of hope that it got to the beating the sun?
No,
I don't wanna see
absolutely
that.
not.
5 was more painful beatings of son and wife, and so on. I think they maybe even
Wait, when
allude
did
to
the
like
finger cut
possible
off
rape
happen?
and stuff.
No, so the finger cutoff is
So,
with he
with the
sees
weight.
his friend Jimmy McCann, who
Oh, I know,
was-
but when was that in the process?
that was all for the weight. So because a lot of
Oh,
people,
the weight. That was the
Right,
weight.
which
yeah.
is funny because when he first sees Jimmy McCann in the beginning,
He says-
"Oh, you look a little heavier," and that's when Jimmy McCann gets like grim looking because I think his
Yeah.
wife's finger just probably got
Yeah.
cut.
It's
off.
Oh,
Like,
that's
he's
yeah.
probably-
I do. Oh, sorry. Go
So
ahead.
no,
Matt.
I was just gonna say it goes from that to breaking of limbs, and then the 10th infraction, you're shot to death. So
Yeah.
you're gonna probably, if you get to the 9th, you're probably gonna stop.
Yeah.
knowing the next one's death.
And that's only happened to like 2% of them. But something I wondered about though is I know we're saving adaptations for later. In Cat's Eye, where they have the adaptation of Quitters Inc., I think it's more effective the way Cat's Eye does it. When he asks about the weight in the end, Donati jokes with him like,
Yeah.
"Oh, if you don't lose it, we'll cut off your wife's finger," and it's played like a joke. And so then the ending in Cat's Eye is more effective when he does see the woman's finger.
I
It's
would
like,
agree.
ooh. And this though, I didn't get the sense that he was joking. I got the idea that like. Donati was being
yeah,
serious, and then he
100%
sees it.
serious,
So
yeah.
the little twist didn't quite land.
Well, that's the whole Hollywood magic for you.
Yeah.
Hey, you know what? Sometimes big Hollywood knows how to tell a big
Yeah.
story.
Big Hollywood.
But it's great. I mean,
Jimmy
look,
Cann.
this it's another one. It's like it's like the legend that's slightly heightened. It's slightly pulpy. And I think it's just fun. It's a fucking.
I
Fun
think
story.
I think it's the kind of story where, like, the way it's written, you know, the questions of practicality, like, wouldn't the wife go to the police or something?
Yeah.
Those are things that
You have to
you just
kinda
gotta
skim
let it
past
go.
that.
Yeah,
I mean,
It's
one thing
I
I-
get it though, but
No,
it's
yeah.
And I do like that it's slightly cartoonish. Like one of my favorite moments in it, it's so silly, is that he gets the bill at the end.
Yeah.
And he's like, and they charge him 50 cents for the electricity on the floor, and he's like, they're charging for the electricity. It's
Yeah,
like,
I
it's
love
like
that.
It's like a honeymooners thing. She's like, just pay it. Like I love that though. It
Yeah.
reminded me of that. What's that story in Full Dark and No Stars where the guy's luck starts going great and like the
I
bad
knew-
stuff
it's
starts
the
happening?
shorter
to the
of
guy.
the- of
It's
the five
that kind
stories,
of
I think,
tone,
yeah.
like this really dark thing, and they're like, oh honey, and I don't know, that was like really nice.
Yeah.
Story.
So this one was actually written specifically for Night Shift then.
It was.
It was.
Yeah,
well,
this
it was
is
never.
one of the
It was
four.
previously unpublished, so it ended up
Yeah.
in this.
Because this is another one I could see easily in like a penthouse.
Yeah.
Yeah, but at the
Yeah.
same time, though, like, I feel like it wasn't king enough. Like,
Yeah.
he might have sent this to a thing, and they would have been like, "Yeah, we want something more king."
Come on,
It's like- and then he
Steve,
just sends
leave
it
on.
again and it says Richard Bachman.
Like, seriously though.
Yeah.
But any other thoughts on
Do we?
Peterson?
Yeah,
I guess we kind of touched upon that last sentence. Is so good. Again, another great ending to another great
Yeah.
Stephen
It is,
King
yeah.
short story.
Yeah.
I mean, it's very cinematic
Yeah.
because it's so visual and you just like hear like a piano like diddly.
And
know.
for proof, it translates perfectly to the adaptation
Yeah.
that is in Cat's Eye.
Good old
Yeah.
Woods.
Yeah.
Vampires hunk.
Oh wait,
James
is it?
Woods.
It's James Woods. I thought it
Yeah.
was Jimmy
Yeah.
Caan.
James
No,
Woods.
James
Oh.
Woods.
Jimmy Caan is who I pictured in The Ledge when I was reading it.
Who's that? But in
Robert
the,
Hayes.
Yeah, from
Jimmy
Airplane.
Caan.
Anyways, final thoughts. Quitters Inc.
Love it.
Solid.
I can't quit this story if I'm being honest.
I can't quit those munchkins of Mountain Dew.
I know, and if there's
you
anything I
did.
can't quit, it's laying on the beach at night, watching the night surf come in, and that's our number 4 best story in Night Shift is Night Surf, which you may know as a prequel of sorts to The Stand.
Yeah, you know, it's funny. I was very quiet in the last one because I was sitting there for 5 minutes wondering how you're going to connect Quitters Inc. to Night Surf. Bravo. Did a very good job. Like Randall said, yeah, this was published in 1974 in Cavalier. This is a very strange story to have ahead of The Stand. You know, right now we read it and it works because we understand. I mean, I think it works either way, but right now it means a lot more when we know what everything's going down in The Stand. But could you imagine, like, I kept, when I was reading this, because I really love this, it reminds me of Hemingway's stories, Hills Like White Elephants,
Yeah.
where there's a lot in the details and so much less in, like, the dialogue. And
It's
everything
not
else.
very plot heavy or anything.
No,
like
it's not.
that,
It's just
yeah.
there, and you have to kind of discern a lot of things. But could you? I mean, it's just very odd to like have this like. You know, you're reading the story about some random flu. There's a lot of like mythology in here
About the
That's-
Asian
that's in there.
flu.
It's very lived in.
Yeah.
It's a very lived in world. But anyway, it's about a bunch of rebellious teens and they're roaming around a post-apocalyptic New England, and there's a super flu, and they're kind of dejected,
Apathetic.
nihilistic, apathetic teens that are
kind of just living life as much as they can because they kind of know already that the world's crumbled around them and they're just waiting for their own demise in a sense. Like,
Yeah.
it kind of reminds me of the 1979 video by Smashing Pumpkins.
Oh, yeah.
You know? Like, and there's a little bit of Lord of the Flies-ish to this.
Well, they end up killing a businessman they find who has Captain Trips, the flu,
which has some of the most haunting images in
and
this.
and something came to mind. Well, a couple things came to mind. Is this like in the exact world of The Stand, or is it kind of like the Dark Tower?
Actually,
different version.
I think it was actually it says here is actually published in 1969.
Really?
It was 1969 in Uber's magazine, which is a literary journal from the University of Maine.
Yeah, I feel like I knew that this was really early.
Yeah.
Like, and that this was a story that I feel like he was turning around in his mind a lot. Like,
just to think about the fact that Captain Trips was in his head for almost a decade. It's crazy to think about, before he did The Stand.
The world in it is not exactly like The Stand, because in this one they've survived like 2 other flus, and then this one comes along and kills them. Whereas in The Stand, it's like this outbreak that happens from this military testing facility, and it just wipes out everyone. So I don't know. Is it in the world of The Stand exactly, or is it more like that parallel universe kind of?
Well, do they? I'm sorry, I can't remember. Do they know exactly what the cause of the flu was?
No, they don't mention
very well.
They just think it's the flu.
Well,
there's a line in here. Here, let me.
But I guess the Asian thing is what's interesting to me, because they all say, oh, we all survived like the A5 flu and the A6 flu, but this one is different. So like I get the idea it's been warred.
Yes, call it Captain Trips though. Right?
Yeah, they do. They call it a bunch of it because it's a whole. There's actually almost like more. Mythology about the flu in this than there is in like the actual Stand.
Yeah.
In some sort
Well,
of
The Stand's
respects.
pretty basic. It's just that
It
the
tells
flu
exactly.
got out.
I guess it could
But,
come in waves.
But here
know?
because they call it A2 is one thing, and
That's
then
right.
it's A6, which was another form. But he basically says it here. He goes, so here we were with the whole human race wiped out, not by atomic weapons or biowarfare or pollution or anything grand like that, just the flu. Little did they know it actually was a biological weapon. I like to imagine that this is in the same world.
place.
And that what's actually more frightening to me is knowing that is that somewhere else out there there's a really like philosophical battle between good and evil that's actually happening between Flag and Abigail's people. And
they're just the lost
and they're
ones.
just there.
Because not ever. That's something that always bugged me a little bit about The Stand. I'm like, and The Stand happened because in The Stand, the book, they purposely release it to the rest of the world so the U.S. doesn't get blamed for it. So that means the entire globe is affected by this.
Yeah, because they mentioned London.
Exactly, yeah. Mm-hmm. And so it's funny in The Stand because you had these 2 camps in Boulder and then in Las Vegas. But I always do wonder, I'm like, there's no way every single survivor went to one of them. And I do like to think that there are still these pockets of people, either just, like I said, being told nihilists. Because Flag's people aren't nihilists. They're not good people, but they're not like they believe in something.
What's even crazier is that apparently only white people survive too in The Stand, except for Mother Abigail and maybe the Rat Man too. So you think of it that way too. Oh, and the judge is white in the book. I'm pretty sure.
Oh, he is. No, in the book he is.
Yeah,
yeah, that is kind of weird, huh?
But we'll talk about that in our Stand.
No, I just thought this was really creepy, and like you said, when they burn the business.
Oh yeah.
They kind of say it's almost like a dark joke, and they say it's like they kind of talk about like offering it to the dark gods
so they can live.
So maybe like this will like help them live longer, even though they say winter's coming around the corner and they're probably all going to be dead by Christmas. So they all know this is coming. And the thing that I thought was really interesting is that these kids are still awful.
Oh yeah.
Like even though they know
Especially
death's knocking on their door, they're like just like shitty kids, like all the way.
Like the main
end.
guy Bernie, like he's such an asshole.
And
he reminds me of
you
Charlie
think that this
Decker.
would like humble you or put you in some kind of state, and so I thought to have to be in that weird mindset too is kind of.
Do you guys think they were like that though before the plague? That's something I was.
I get the sense that like everyone, like the way he paints kids is that they're all just kind of like reverting to their sort of like inner animalistic instincts. Like, look how he describes what's going on with the radio station. You know, there's like 2 kids that took over, and he's like, and one of the this is the radio host. Angie by the Rolling Stones, the cracked voice on Corey's radio said, "I'm sure you dug that one. A blast from the past that's a golden gas, straight from the groove yard. A plata that matters. I'm Bobby. This was supposed to be Fred's night, but Fred got the flu. He's all swelled up." Like,
that's it's super.
It's
absolutely
kind of like,
removed from reality.
It feels like a stunted adolescence. You know, I feel like these are the way they are it's how they're always
So
going
do we
to be.
think any of the people in this group are immune? Do you think there are people that are immune
No, I
within
think
this world?
somebody starts to get sick in it.
I know, that's the thing. is
Needles
I-
get sick.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Well-
he said that he had the Hong because they talk about the Hong Kong flu.
Yeah.
that was something different, and he like how people would get that and they'd be fine.
And that's what is different than from the stand
Well,
to
what we
me.
know of in the Stand.
But that's like you said, because it could just all be part of the same thing, and it gets wiped. People get wiped out in waves. I think. I mean, this story to me is very cold and fatalistic, and so
Yeah.
I got the idea that
They were
they're
all
all
gonna
going to
get
get
it
eventually. I think
yeah.
Needles got it. And Bernie, and in a weird way, that's the one thing that keeps Bernie kind of human is that he actually does worry about that. Like, so he's not completely severed from who he once was, even though he's a very awful person. Like,
Yeah.
it's like sort of human to see him worry a little bit, I guess.
Well, yeah, I mean, because there's this really awful nightmare that he has on
Oh,
passage
yeah.
too. He goes,
God.
he's talking about the man that they burned.
Yeah.
Because I had sweaty, ugly dreams about Alvin Sakon. He was propped behind the wheel of his shiny yellow Lincoln, talking about his grandmother. He was nothing but a bloated, blackened head and a charred skeleton. He smelled burnt. He talked on, and after a while I couldn't make out a single word. I woke up breathing hard. But then he says, to make sure we know he's an asshole, Susie was sprawled across my thighs, pale and bloated.
Yeah. Oh, he's awful.
Like, he's
with
not,
Susie.
just don't forget.
I have a list
think
of
about it.
everything.
He's
he
a
calls
nothing
her.
but a bloated, blackened head, and he wakes up with, and he describes Susie as being bloated as well. He's just like this.
And that is just one of many adjectives. I listed out all of them.
Oh God.
Flabby, mouthy, little bitch Susie with her fat ass, panting like a horse, greasy plate, a big clown face, which he kind of related to her to looking like one of those like Goosebumps amusement park.
Yeah.
entrances. Bloated, and then pig.
Good Lord.
Sounds like Donald Trump.
I know, seriously.
No, I haven't gotten to this part in The Stand yet, but there's a scene in the miniseries where Harold talks to a guy in a car who's a skeleton.
Yeah.
Who's kind of like a like burned like corpse. Is that in the book? And are they trying to like connect
In a
that
mini,
to-
that's in the miniseries.
Well, that's in a dream that
It's in a
Harold
dream that he
has,
has,
but
yeah.
I don't think that's in it. But there is a bit where I feel like the bit where Larry's in the tunnel and the
He sees-
and the
sees
things
something.
The
and
corpse for a second.
and the
Yeah,
corpse like
something.
says "Hi, Larry" or something like that's in the book. I
Yeah.
feel
Your
like.
favorite character?
I fucking hate. No, I
Hold
love
on,
Larry
we need-
Underwood. I hate Adam
We're
Stewart.
gonna hold the Adam Stewart dialogue
Conversation
for another
Come on,
month.
Come on,
I love Adam Stewart.
Love Adam
We're,
Stewart.
we're
I,
gonna
um,
have words over Adam.
All right, final thoughts on Night Surf.
This is ranked really high for me.
Yeah,
Yeah.
It's another unsettling one. It's hard and depressing to get through, but I loved it.
It's a great
yeah.
story.
I'm always interested in disenchanted youth, even if it's forced because of a deadly virus.
Yeah, I mean, I think this is. I mean, I just think it really captures that malaise of the apocalypse really well. Like where you just feel like nothing else matters, you know.
Yeah.
And I think it's just effective storytelling in the sense of just describing the world. I mean, like it's not very long. It's very short. In fact, I think I read it on my train ride home.
It's like a 10-minute
It's
read.
like nothing
Yeah.
fast.
Yeah.
But you get so much more out of this than a lot of the longer ones. I mean, you get a lot more out of this than you do in, say, what is it? Someone's got to give, or no? Sometimes they come back.
God.
I'm just joking. That was,
Well,
that was an
it's
intentional
another
joke.
story like Children of the Corn where he reveals the information I think very astutely, and it's you don't get these big monologues like this happened, then this happened. I love the way he kind of feeds us information. We still don't know a ton about the world by the end, which I think is okay.
We know enough.
Well, we're gonna know a lot more about that world in a couple weeks when we dive into The Stand.
Yeah.
So, but if there's one thing that's scarier than Captain Trips, well, that would be the Boogeyman.
So the Boogeyman, which was my personal number one, by the way. This is a simple story about a boogeyman in the closet.
Bogeyman, right?
Okay, we can move on to the next one.
Boogeyman.
No, long story short, it's about this man named Billings who has an appointment with a psychologist named Dr. Harper. Billings is a very unstable man who's convinced that it's because of him that his three children, were killed by a boogeyman. The guy's a real jerk.
Racist.
He's
misogynist.
racist. He's resentful that he had to drop out of school because his wife got pregnant. He shakes at the thought of his kid being a quote-unquote sissy. Throws around the N-word like nobody's business. So he's awful. But we kind of sympathize with Dr. Harper as we go along. But long story short, one by one he describes his children's deaths and how they were ruled as, crib death, a brain convulsion, falling out of the crib. That's what the medical profession
Swallowing
says.
tongue.
Swallowing your tongue. But we learn as he goes along that he's convinced that this boogeyman has been haunting his children and may be haunting him still. Now, who here growing up was never afraid of a potential boogeyman or monster in their closet?
Me, duh.
Thank you very much.
I mean, I was afraid of Michael Myers, who is who is the boogeyman?
He is the boogeyman.
Yeah.
The shape.
I was very afraid of the dark.
What I'm saying is, right off the bat, whatever the boogeyman is to you, that alone can disturb you. And so that, just from that starting point, we're off to the races. And the story is just disturbing throughout, not only because we're talking about the death of children in such a vicious way as gets described in the book.
Their faces turning black.
Their faces turning black. But yeah, Dan, you want to take one?
Well, yeah, I was going to ask a couple of things because this was my number one until rereading Night Shift, and I would probably put a couple others before that, but that doesn't matter. I think the reason it was my number one was because of what you said. I mean, he leaves the boogeyman so obtuse and vague in it. I mean, you get some details that there's like a slithering noise, and at the end, when it's revealed, of course, that Dr. Harper is the boogeyman, you see this claw. The thing that really stuck with me was being able to place your own projection onto the boogeyman, and of course, the kid's death. The thing that struck me, though, rereading it's a hard thing to get through because, like you said, Lester Billings is horrible. He's like a horrible guy. But the thing that was so rattling to me in a good way was that he's this horrible guy, and he goes back and forth between being like misogynistic and racist and all this stuff, and even saying kind of terrible shit about his kids. But then you do get the idea that he loves them, and has he been driven crazy by this? And then at a certain point, I was like, well, maybe he's the one who killed his kids. But then you see, of course, that the doctor is the boogeyman. So I think it just plays with your expectations so much. Yeah, do you have any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I had a similar experience rereading it where, and in listening to this, you will have already heard about Strawberry Spring and The Man Who Loved Flowers, where it's reasonable to expect that this horrible person is actually the boogeyman. Mm-hmm. And honestly, for these children, he may also have sort of been the boogeyman, right? Yeah. Like, he's physically, verbally abusive. He's misogynistic, resentful, like a terrible, terrible person and a terrible parent. But, and this is going to be the third time that we've referenced 10 Cloverfield Lane, but like in 10 Cloverfield Lane, it is possible for this guy to be terrible and awful and a horrendous parent, and for there to also be a boogeyman. It's totally. Both of those horrors can coexist. So the most horrifying moment in it to me is actually when he describes choosing to put his third kid back in the bedroom because he knew the boogeyman was coming. So he essentially sacrificed his child. And that is every bit as scary as realizing that the boogeyman has this Dr. Harper.
Yeah, and that last death was the most frightening to me too. I think it was the scarecrow-looking boogeyman. Basically, it shook the child like a sheet until his neck snapped, and I just thought it just really
like
creeped me out.
Is that what he says? Like ice breaking?
Yeah. Ugh. But yeah, and it's just it's a really ugly story. I think it's probably the ugliest story in this book, for all the right reasons. I mean, I don't, when I read a Stephen King book, I don't always want to like feel satisfied necessarily. You know, I mean, like everyone in this story is horrible. But yeah, so I love what you said about Cloverfield Lane. Like, oh yeah, this monster can exist, and so can this one, and they both result in.
And that's a really interesting viewpoint. I think for me, it's like you said, Dan, there's an expectation, but it's like, for me, the idea of the boogeyman, like, it sounds so stupid.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? But this is such a dark story, but like, it's like, but I think what I love is that he's almost investigating what the phrase boogeyman means, because kids are all scared of the boogeyman, but it is whatever it is, and it's something that you ostensibly grow out of, being afraid of the boogeyman. But I like, but like you guys are saying, the boogeyman can manifest through like an actual malevolent spirit, or as a piece of shit father. But I think that for me, I almost feel, and like, this is an unpopular opinion, but I almost feel like calling it the boogeyman cheapens it a little bit. It's like, it hurts the story for me a little bit.
But then you would lose that moment where the kids start saying the boogeyman and the wife denies that she taught them that word and the father doesn't believe them.
Yeah.
That let
That's a good
believe her. That is one of the moments that
That is
can
a
you
good
imagine
point.
if a kid that like can barely say I want some
Boogeyman.
cookies all of a sudden say, "Oh my god."
No, that's a good point. Yeah.
That's a very good point.
I think it goes back to what we were discussing before with The Man Who Loved Flowers, the assessment on that. There's a passage where he talks about how we were on a quiet street with nice neighbors. We were happy. I asked Rita once if she wasn't worried. Bad luck comes in threes and all that. She said, not for us. She said, Andy was special. She said, God had drawn a ring around him. And again, it goes back to that idea. And like he mentions how, earlier in that same passage, he talks about it was like that next year was the best one for us. I'd give every, finger on my right hand to have it back again. Oh, the war in Vietnam was still going on and the hippies were still running around with no clothes on. There's terror that's going out there. The war, the world is falling apart with Vietnam, and the peace movement's going on and everything, and they want to believe that they can live in this like sort of microcosm of peace, and clearly with the boogeyman, it seems like that metaphor of like, no, you can't get away from it sometimes. Like you're not untouchable just because you live in this like American life,
And that's something. I mean, we've talked tons and tons about Stephen King being interested in the darkness inside in all towns, all small towns. And he has this passage also. I remember probably around that time where he talks about moving to this new place, and the boogeyman following him in the street, like slithering in the sewers, and then they find that trail of muck in the house. This idea that this just nastiness follows you wherever you go in idyllic suburbia. Yeah, it's super creepy. And like I said, rereading it, not the most likable story, but definitely one of my favorites because it's just, it makes me feel so slimy every time I read it.
And then going back to when you're maybe originally reading it and you think to yourself, oh, well, this guy Billings is probably a boogeyman, right? Originally, when you think of it that way. But more importantly, you definitely don't think it's Dr. Harper. At least I didn't. Especially because of a couple passages in which he really goes after Billings in subtle ways. There's one part where Billings says, children can tie a man down, Women like that, especially when the man is brighter than they. Don't you find that's true? Harper grunted noncommittally. Okay, so he's kind of like thinking this guy, Billings is an asshole. Yeah. And then there's another part here where is this moment?
I mean, if you really think about it, though, like the whole doctor... Like being it goes back. It goes back in the thing of like when you actually really think about it, it's like what the hell is a boogeyman like acting like a therapist?
It is weird. I mean, I think
don't overthink it.
I know. Yeah, that's the thing. Is this the thing? Is the story? The story is so impressive because that ending is the cheesiest fucking shit ever. Yeah. But
I love it.
But he earns but the thing is, King earns it.
Yeah.
Well, because he does get at this idea that the boogeyman is following him wherever. I get what you're saying because the idea that the boogeyman is under this like man suit and that he's like talking the whole time. Like, what do you think about this? And like, I just what if like because we don't know what really happens in the end. What if he walks in, Dr. Harper has the mask off. He's the boogeyman. He's holding it, but he's like. He's going to Lester like, we're both boogeymen. We're not so different, you and I. They just team up to be like horrible together.
The Boogeyman brothers.
I bet you all a nickel that I found the other passage Justin was looking for, which is, how could I go to Rita and admit I was wrong? I had to be strong. She was always such a jellyfish. Look how easy she went to bed with me when we weren't married. Yeah. Harper said, on the other hand, look how easily you went to bed with her. And I said, oh, snap!
Yep, that's the other part. That is the other part.
The boogeyman's a sex-positive feminist.
Well, yeah, I mean, he's just terrified of change.
Yeah, he is. Yeah, he's like the hippies. He's like Vietnam.
So, any other final thoughts on the boogeyman?
A couple things.
Yeah, bring it on.
They mention Tales from the Crypt in the story.
Yeah.
And so you have to kind of put yourself in that mindset of like
he
a
talks
DC
about
Comics.
A specific illustrator, doesn't he?
He talks about a specific monster as he sees like the slithering.
And I have to wonder if because he's Stephen King such
Brand
good friends with Bernie Wrightson and everything, I wonder if that is an illustrator he also knew.
And another part is when one of the second kid is screaming "Craws" over and over again, and he thinks that the kid means claws. And he second guesses himself and says, or maybe closet.
Oh, I think Harper suggests
either
closet.
way. Yeah.
Harper says maybe she was saying closet.
So,
it is weird thinking that. I mean, I love this story, but it is funny to think that. Oh, well, the boogeyman is like a really articulate, has articulate speech. Like, oh, hello, welcome to my office. Yes.
I mean, there's a lot to take out of this one, which I think is always the best. And
It's just a straight up horror story too.
Yeah.
This one's still. I mean, I don't. It's maybe structurally not the best constructed. I mean, they're probably and then thematically not.
Oh, it's pretty great.
But it just makes me feel so uneasy every time I read it. It just is gross. I love it.
Hot take. Maybe the boogeyman is whatever you fear most, and what Billings fears most is self-exploration.
Maybe it's a little Dandelion.
That is a great take, I will say.
It's a very hot take.
It's not even a hot take. It's a really... I like that.
We just want to thank Mr. Beaumont Ogieman, Mr. Bogeman for scaring the hell out of us. But no, and the whole thing at the end where he's just saying "so nice" over and over again, just shambling over to him, and they say when he speaks, it sounds like he has like a mouthful of seaweed. He says it's just like disgusting.
Yeah. I do. There is something to be said about the whole helicopter parenting thing aspect of which he was obviously trying to buck. I think about that Mad About You episode where
my God.
I know. Look, I'm just gonna try to weld it to another piece of pop culture. But there is a really controversial episode that happened, which is
controversial.
It was. There was a controversial episode where the one that they have the kid and it's crying, and they don't want to go to the kid because that was part of the train. You have to have the kid realize that they have to grow up and it has to go on its own. And they would always go over, Helen Hunt's oh, I want to go. I it's crying. The baby's crying. Can I go? And then Paul Reiser's no, just leave her. We gotta. She needs to grow up. And I think that's a hard part for any parent to go over is that sometimes you kind of have to let your kid conquer his own demons, and you can't always just leave
just leave her. She's gotta grow up.
Just grow up. Yeah,
that was my Paul Reiser.
It was a bad call.
I'm just waiting for the closet door to open and Mr. Bogeman comes in and everyone starts clapping.
No, you hear Paul Reiser.
You hear the bongos "Tell me why I love you like I do." Tell me.
Well, you know what? That was a great talk, but I think it's time to boogie woogie woogie on down the ladder to something called the last rung on the ladder. This is our number 2. That's right, number 2 best story in Night Shift.
And the best part about this is that it's a different kind of a horror story.
Yes,
it's definitely a drama more so, but it's the kind of thing that just never leaves you. And I think that's the most haunting thing of all. It's about this character Larry. He's on his way home with his father from a funeral. On the way, he recounts a story about his childhood, where his sister and he would climb up an old ladder in a barn near the house. They were told not to play on it, but they go anyways. One day, a rung on the ladder breaks, and the girl almost falls to her death, if not for Larry, who saves her by building up all this hay to break her fall. Over the course of the flight, he keeps recounting the rest of the story of his sister and the rest of her life, which is pretty tragic. And you've realized that the funeral was for the sister, that she had committed suicide by swan diving off of a building.
And she used to swan dive off the beam in the barn.
Yes, and she used to swan dive off of the beam. And it's really tragic. Larry, the whole thing is there's a letter that he receives, and he receives it too late, that because he hadn't updated her with his new address, that the letter may have gotten to him before she decided to do something like this. And he's kind of trying to convince himself that even if he had that, maybe he wouldn't have been able to do anything. And I think that he, in the back of his mind, feels like he probably maybe could have done something, and it'll haunt him for the rest of his life. And I don't know. I was in tears on the train reading this story. It just hit me really hard, and I was kind of like what you were saying, where I thought maybe there was going to be something supernatural, but he does such a good job of not letting it go there that I really just started to get invested in the drama of the story, and the ending was just heartbreaking.
Yeah, so this story is particularly resonant to me because I have a little sister. I'm actually same age difference as they are in the book, and we have a very good relationship. We're still in touch. She's not a call girl in Los Angeles or anything like that. But there's this idea when you're growing up, especially. I remember we're really close, but I would always pick on her, and even now when we see each other, we always joke that we always get into some huge knockdown, drag out fight. I'm not a combative person, but her and I can just really go at it.
Saint Ager.
Yeah, Saint Anger comes out.
Saint Anger.
But you know, I remember one time I was asking my parents, I'm like, you know, why is Allison, other Allison, she gets like so upset like when we fight, and she gets so sensitive about blah blah. My mom was like, well, you know, sorry, you know, Jesus, sorry, I wasn't trying to do that. My mom was like, well, you're her big brother, and she'll always look at you like that. And Jesus Christ, I'm sorry, I was not planning.
That's all right, man.
You're her big brother, and she will always look up to you, and like she thinks you're like the coolest person because you'll always be her big brother. And ever since my mom told me that, like I've always thought about that and just tried to be a lot nicer to her. And like I said, we've always been close. Like I've never been a flat out jerk to my sister. But I think this story just really made me realize like the faith and the trust that your siblings can put into you, and especially your younger siblings. And yeah, it just made me think about that. And and like I said, my sister's like in no danger of going down the path of this girl. But it just made me think of like how important it is to make sure that as you get older and you get busier and maybe good things happen in your life and your life is going a certain way you want to, not to like lose touch with your family and not to take things for granted like that. So anyway, sorry, man.
Yeah.
Jesus, yeah.
No, I see what you're saying, and I think it's like I think the horror of this story is the horror that little things like the progress of life will inadvertently harm others. Like you don't give someone your updated address, and because you didn't do that, you weren't able to stop them from killing themselves. And how you have to justify how the tiny neglect that you did in doing logistical things, how, you know, like he asked himself, he's like, if I had done this one thing, would she still be alive? And I think that that's something we all do as humans, is just ask ourselves, like, if I had done this one little thing different, might this have played out differently?
Well, and the other thing we all do as humans is neglect people we love without doing so intentionally, without doing it from a place of unkindness.
He doesn't mean
but
it.
But it's real, like life is life, and it moves on, and all of a sudden you realize that you've been thoughtless, or you've forgotten a birthday, or you haven't made a phone call, and these people you love and take for granted, because there are a lot of people in the world who are very lucky to have people they love, and that is a thing that is easy to take for granted. And then all of a sudden you're left with nothing. You're left with empty air.
It's like what Paul Eshberg once said. The ones who love us least are the ones we die to please. The ones that love us best are the ones we lay to rest. Yeah. And visit our graves on holidays at best.
And, you take it for granted, man. And it really is a thing. You just wonder, and it's so easy to put off a phone call. It's so easy to put off an email.
I do it all the time.
Yeah, and none of us mean it. I don't think Larry, is that his name? I don't think Larry means it either. And but man, it's so heartbreaking when he reads that final letter, and he's like, that's the one thing that would have gotten me to fly there, and it didn't read it in time.
And that's honestly that's just the genius of King, being able to kind of create those levels of emotional strife. Like, it could have just been enough that she wrote the letter and sent it, but the little detail, like to your point, is very
that it got there late
and very
because
real.
She didn't,
you know.
And I felt like it was also strange that this is a story that they mentioned that they live in Hemingford Home, Nebraska.
Yep.
And I thought that to be such an insular story, and like something that's actually just like a great piece of writing, and obviously this is written before The Stand, so he didn't purposely try to tie it into the realm of Stephen King.
I don't know, because it was written just for this. So would it be close? I don't know though.
Well, maybe he had it in his head. Yeah. Yeah. But just awful, and this one just hit me.
Really hard. Man, and it's funny because it's not one when I grew up. I mean, I always liked this story, but it didn't. Once again, you get, because that's something you realize as an adult. Like you realize as an adult, oh man, I need to really value my siblings and be close to them and really appreciate that. Whereas when you're growing up, you're like, we're picking on each other, blah blah blah, and it's it just, I mean, that reading, I mean, as you can see, it's me being a crybaby. Like me, me reading this on the train the other day, because I remember you had read first, Mike, and you were like, you had sent that text. Like I think.
Well, no, he had told me, he had warned me about it. Like,
oh,
he had
really?
said-
Yeah.
Matt had warned you about it?
Well, he had said like, man, I just like really got emotional reading this.
Yeah. And then you sent that text. Like, yeah, it really is like it feels like literature, not just genre fiction or whatever. And yeah, I wasn't prepared for it either. I finished it the other day, and I was just like, it felt like a truck hit me.
I just think this is honestly his first like successful piece of literary fiction.
Yeah.
Like from front to back, like it's just flawless. In
Yeah,
that
it's
sense.
beautiful.
And it's like I feel like it's him coming into his own in a style that he really wouldn't capitalize on until different seasons, yes, but I mean,
I think he
the
definitely
Green
kept
Mile's
the
a
body.
really good one.
Yeah.
Like, I mean,
Yeah.
the body. Yeah, I'd say that.
Yeah, I was joking. I think it was in the last episode. Because
yeah.
Lawnmower Man about an occurrence on Owl Creek Bridge and a good man is hard to find and a small good thing. And these classic short stories that will be taught in lit classes forever. And this feels of a piece with those kinds of stories.
Oh, absolutely.
I mean, like I was talking about, I read this when I was 7. I've been haunted by it.
You mentioned that in the
ever
first episode.
since. It moved me very deeply. It means something different to me as an adult, but it affected me very deeply as a child. And I think that literature that can grow with you in that way is a real gift.
I agree, and not to get off on a tirade here, but the sad thing is that this story probably will never be taught in classes because of the way that a lot of the main literary circles view King, and I think it's a fucking shame. It really is, because it's a beautiful story. It's beautifully told, and again, I don't know. I think it's gonna be, if you're not a Stephen King fan, I don't think you're gonna read it, and it's ridiculous.
It's the way I look at it's the way I mean, Heather, like my wife, always gets like wonders like why I get so like outraged when I go to bookstores and he's like lumped into like the stupid horror section and he's never in fiction. And like they actually did put 11, 22, 63 in a bunch of fiction areas, thank God. But the like we go to like there's a bookstore in Wicker Park that
Myopic.
Like, on Myopic.
Yeah.
And they have like a basement where they put all the horror sections. And it's like all his books are like let right next to like, Twilight and like Goosebumps. And I'm like, this is a joke. Like this is an absolute joke. Like
I don't know, Monster Blood's pretty good.
Like Monster Blood's pretty great. But Welcome to Dead House and Last Rung on the Ladder. Let me say. But it just drives me nuts because again, like, and this is gonna be something that you're gonna hear from me again and again, like over these podcasts. Like I hate this snark that comes with literary fiction and like these literary writers, like, because I heard about it nonstop, like at FSU. I like hated all my teachers there.
Oh, they were
so against genre.
Weingartner wouldn't because he was buddies with Stephen King, but everyone else they would.
But there would be like some writers that were in there that would just like sit there and like dig into like all this genre stuff. And I grew up on that stuff, and I like that stuff because I feel like that's like, first off, it's not that easy to write. Go tell that to Rod Serling, who wrote like
amazing,
countless fucking great stories for the Twilight Zone again and again and again and again. Versus someone who sat there and wrote, gorgeous prose about like, life themes and all, but there's an originality that comes with genre that speaks to a far broader like writer, I would argue. And like the fact that he does get maligned on it is like, you can't, that just bothers me. So when I get to this story like this, I do think that bothered me a lot, like reading this story, like it just being like, God, this guy is such a fucking genius writer, and he gets shamed on
I think
all the time.
K. Austin Collins, who's a reviewer, recently on the podcast, I heard him talk about how it's with genre that we can really get down to deeper themes, as opposed to just mosaic scenery and whatnot. And that's, I know we're kind of getting off on a tangent about King in general, but there's a reason why we've got genre fiction. It can't all be beautiful.
It's using these otherworldly elements to bring out a greater humanity in you. I don't mean humanity like being a good person. I mean just like human aspects. I mean, you're forced to kind of confront these things about yourself when you're faced with a handful of alien eyeballs,
But I agree. And like, someone, you could have a story using aliens to talk about, racial problems that someone might not read if they knew it was about that, but they read it from the standpoint, like, that Star Trek episode, about the white and the black, seeing that, it might reach someone on a level and penetrate and actually get into their head and change something. But that they wouldn't have necessarily read the story if they knew it was actually about that.
It's the hook, right? It's the gateway.
Yeah.
I think that's slowly improving. I think that
definitely.
Tolkien is often now shelved in fiction. Vonnegut is shelved in fiction exclusively. Slaughterhouse-Five is one of the best pieces of science fiction ever. It's also, in my opinion, the best war novel ever written, and it can be both those things. There was a big Outlander thing where Diana Gabaldon had to write the New York Times and request that they stop calling the Outlander books romance novels because, first of all, they're not. Romance is a very specific genre, and it's not that Outlander is better. It's that it's not. Romance novels just stand alone. They have these very specific requirements, and those books are not that. And it's also not fantasy, and it's not science fiction, and it's not time travel. It's sort of all of those things. And gradually, I think those books are starting to break. Like Murakami is a genre writer. Yeah. No one would ever say, "Oh, well, let's make sure he stays in science fiction." So I'm hoping that we're going to start to see those break down more and more as things like the Harry Potter series become more and more ubiquitous. And, yeah.
I want to, at the end of the day, I mean, I kind of love that a story like this can exist in the same collection as like Graveyard Shift. I think that's just like a testament to
Lawnmower Man.
Yeah,
Green Pubes is so wild. It
Green
really
Pubes.
is.
Think about Green Pubes in that last passage of.
Well, this or just like he writes about green pubes, but then he could write about like this, like I mean, just look how just real this feels. I mean, like he writes. I remember that day very clearly. The sky was overcast, and while it wasn't cold, you could feel it wanting to be cold, wanting to get down to the business of frost and freeze, snow and sleet. The fields were stripped. The animals were sluggish and morose. There seemed to be funny little drafts in the house that had never been there before. On a day like that, the only really nice place to be was the barn. It was warm, filled with a pleasant mixed aroma of hay and fur and dung, and with a mysterious chuckling, cooing sounds of the barn swallows high up in the third loft. If you creaked your neck up, you could see the white November light coming through the clinks in the roof and try to spell your name. It was a game that really only seemed agreeable on overcast autumn days. Like, that is some, like, Robert Frost
beautiful,
stuff.
man. It's fucking beautiful.
That is gorgeous. Yeah. And, like, and it's in the same story as, like, the giant rat, like, that's blind or whatever. So, anybody who ever has a problem with Stephen King, lick my nine.
On that note, final thoughts? Last rung on the ladder?
No, I think it's great, man.
It's very good.
Beautiful, beautiful story. I think the best way to cap off our discussion is if we all just have one for the road, which is our number one.
That was almost sweet, right?
Exactly. I didn't want to end it on a silly one. I wanted it to be sort of, one for the road.
Well, One for the Road was originally published in Maine Magazine circa April 77. So
Maine Magazine.
Maine Magazine.
Everyone's go-to for Maine hot news.
I mean, could you imagine this story? Like pulling up Maine Magazine. First off, I've never read Maine Magazine before.
Is it like because Maine's a vacation state, so is it like a tourist magazine?
I imagine it's a tourist magazine, and they're like, hey, Maine's got Stephen King, and look what he's bringing to the table. Like, this is how he views Maine. Anyway,
guys, I only read Maine for the articles.
Yeah. I like the hot spreads, or should I say the cold spreads?
The cold spreads.
Anyway, this is a coda to Salem's Lot, a sequel, if you will, in the best kind. The best kind of sequel.
Amazing.
Here's the hook. During a massive blizzard all across Maine, a couple of old souls at a local watering hole help a stranded tourist from New York / New Jersey save his family from the vampires of Salem's Lot. Yeah. That's the pitch.
And that's it, yeah.
It's a little bit of a... if I had to pitch it to a Hollywood agent right now, it's... Grumpy Old Men meets 30 Days of Night.
Why do your notes say Halloween 4 Redneck?
Okay, now I have the Halloween 4 Rednecks on there because the way that they come into the bar, it reminds me of the rednecks that are just sitting there, like in Halloween 4, where they're all just like on their own.
Oh, that's right.
Like, yeah, Earl, let's go do something, and then they dunk, 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 like, and then they go off and save the kid. Here's a question: is there a better touch and go sequel than this? I mean, I feel like this is exactly what I wanted and needed after Salem's Lot. I mean, it not only does it it proves that vampires still exist.
Yeah. And this is 2 years later.
And this is 2 years later. And then it also proves that everything that will happen, is now mythology. And it's become this urban legend. And I think one of the powers of this story for me was that we kind of feel like the old timers. Like, we know what's happening. Like, we actually know more than them. Yeah. Because, like, when Booth and Herb, which I fucking love Herb. When they start like kind of whispering about the lot and they relate to some things and like like the things that burned down, we know who burned it down, which they don't.
They don't. Yeah, they don't know about Ben Mears.
And that's kind of cool and like powerful. Like I think that's what we love as sequels is when we're able to see like the story
omniscient
evolve.
reader,
The omniscient, we're the omniscient,
One and
narrator.
what I love about this is that it gets at this idea that yes, they're still vampires, but it also makes it clear that there are not enough of them to overrun the outlying communities. It's more. It's almost like don't go into that part of town, and that is so effective because I love this idea of it just being these like salty Maine locals, just knowing we cannot go into that town. If we don't go into that town, then we're okay. And I also because this book is filled with a lot of ugly characters in general, I love that the two guys at the center of this, they know how dangerous it is. They know that there's a very slim chance of any of them getting out alive, but they're good people.
They still
and
help.
They want, and this guy kind of sucks. Like he's this kind of yuppie douchebag, and they're like, they keep having these moments of like, should we just let him go? And they're like, no, we can't. What are we gonna do if he gets killed or so? We have to try our best to help him, and they do, and they can obviously. But I love that about them. These are good guys.
Yeah, and I guess one of this is just pivoting off what you just said, but it's like. I love Stephen King's like disdain for yuppies.
Yeah.
Even though I think I think
Yeah.
part of him was one to a degree, but it's like he has such a fondness for like salty locals, Like
Old guys.
Yeah,
too,
like old guys. Like he'll make them kind of like losers sometimes, but then he'll make them the heroes too. And like even if you look at The Stand, like Gary Sinise is like the hero. I call him Gary Sinise.
Gary Sinise.
Stu Redman.
Stu Redman.
Hey, Gary Sinise is Stu Redman.
I know, that's how I'm reading it right now, and it's just like, that is who it is in my mind. But it's so funny, but it's like, he's like a salty local,
Yeah.
And it's like, and I love that. But I think like, what I think is interesting is, Stephen King got the idea for Salem's Lot because he drove by this town with a friend when he was in college, and basically there was a story about this town that it just was abandoned. Like one day everyone was gone, and it reminded him of Roanoke, like the old Roanoke story, which he's used in multiple, like especially in Storm of the Century and stuff like that. He loves to call upon that idea of like a whole town mysteriously vanishing, and in a lot of ways, like One for the Road is more in the spirit of that initial spark that inspired Salem's Lot, in the sense that, that is the legend that exists, is that Salem's Lot is a dead town.
King is kind of, or he's this, the main guy is kind of like in a way, surrogate for King's experience. And he's driving by this town, and I just hear, and we've talked about this a ton, but once again, he establishes the idea of what this bar is like so well, and what these guys are like, and what their relationship is like, and he does that for a good little while before the New Jersey yuppie comes in, and it just unfolds so perfectly, and it's very simple. Like there's nothing especially complex about this story. It's just a good yarn, and like you said, we're so accustomed now to sequels being either just retreads or like bigger and better versions of the original, and this is not that. This is just like, okay, what would realistically happen if this town full of vampires got mostly wiped out, but not quite, and someone happened to stumble upon it a couple of years later, and that's really all it is.
And the thing about Salem's Lot, the original novel, is it's so pastoral too, and you can see everything. You can see the house up on the hill from far away. But now we're in the dead of winter. You can't see anything. You've got snow blindness. So that's another great twist on not just having this be a sequel, like you said, bigger and better. It's this whole new thing with vampires in Salem's Lot.
And the seasons change things. Like the snow changes everything.
Vampires in the snow is terrible.
I mean, my favorite moment is when they're in the car and he says something approaches the car, which I thought was incredibly creepy. I mean, it's something with big red eyes. It says, I thought I could see some sort of slumped form fading back from the car, back into the snow. But that could have been imagination. It's
that's
creepy.
something that the horror writer Ramsey Campbell does a lot that I love, which is the idea that it's characters like seeing something but then immediately
writing it off.
Writing it off. Like there's this line in this one Ramsey Campbell book, the Grin of the Dark, where he talks about he's like that man running alongside the train can't be 10 feet tall, can he? And it's like, it's like he'll just say a line like that and then move on, and that's all he'll say.
I love that though.
About that figure you bring up, I actually had a question. He hasn't really answered either way, so I'm just curious what you guys think, because I was wondering, is that the vampire that turned the wife and daughter that's slinking away, or is it the wife. I kind of like to prefer that it's a vampire that turned them. And
But
that's
you
just
never see.
I think that
that's
is.
a good idea.
Yeah, I think
Yeah.
it's the vampire that probably turned them.
because
It's
when
so
they get out,
recent. Then you think the turn
they
is that recent?
say
Yeah.
they say that they see the footsteps of the kid and the wife,
And
and
then they
they
just-
mention that if they had gone even just a little bit, minutes later, they wouldn't have seen those footsteps. So those are fresh.
Yeah.
So it couldn't have been, and that was going the other way, and then
So it had to have been
So
that.
it probably was the
it's
other
so
vampire.
creepy. I
Well,
love
that's
it.
a good.
oh, sorry.
That's a good transition because I mean they describe what the vampires look like with their teeth and,
Yeah.
and their beautiful
Vulpine
faces and pale and beauty.
And they're
But
hovering.
for me,
just-
that's the part.
so,
That's
yeah.
that's the scariest part
Yeah.
for me. Of this whole story is when, Tookie and Booth are just getting ready to get the hell out of town. They're done, and so they're about to leave, and all of a sudden, Mister, she said in a high, clear voice, as sweet as morning mist, "Won't you help me find my mother? She's gone, and I'm so cold." "Honey," I said, "honey, you better get in the truck. Your mother's." I broke off, and if there was ever a time in my life I was close to swooning, that was the moment. She was standing there, you see, but she was standing on top of the snow, and there were no tracks in any direction.
Yeah,
that's
It's
so
so good.
Well, that reminds me of which I talked about on the Salem's Lot episode. But the scariest part of Salem's Lot to me is that moment when King describes Susan and Straker coming towards the cop after the house, and like they're just floating towards him. That to me is like so eerie.
I would say the real great moments of this is kind of like what you were talking about with those things that like the stingers where you just kind of leave with you is the story of Richie. And about how he's just like, I'll sleep in the Marston house.
Oh,
for
the
$80.
trucker guy, or
yeah,
whatever
and,
it is, yeah.
And he like leaves, and then one of the other guys, this guy named Lamont Henry, says real quiet, "That's the last time anyone's going to see Richie Messina."
They just accept it,
and they accept it, and then he's right. And they get
and
they say,
what's
like,
funny too is they don't actually pay him to go do it. He's just like, I'll
just
go do it. Yeah,
because then they say like nobody ever saw Richie again. His wife told the state cops that he'd gone down to Florida to beat a collection agency, but you could see the truth of the thing in her eyes, 6 scared eyes. Not long after that, she moved away to Rhode Island. Maybe she thought Richie was going to come after her some dark night, and I'm not the man to say he might not have done it.
Wait, no,
That's like, ugh.
know what I love about all that? I mean, and we talked about this kind of quiet resignation, just this acceptance of the fact that, we live near this town that's like that. And, I always think, like, okay, like, as we're sitting here talking right now, like, think about the ocean and think about all the things in the ocean right now, like sharks or whatever else, things we don't even know about. And that always freaks me out, like how you could be somewhere safe and just talking about this thing. And if you think about it, there is another part of the world where there are these dangerous creatures or whatever else, and they can't hurt you where you are right now. But just the fact that they're there, I mean, they really establish that in the story.
Well, it's like in Jaws when they're like sitting there talking about their wounds and their flesh.
Yeah,
wounds
and they're
stuff
the
like
thing's
that,
out there.
but it's
Yeah.
right below them.
Yeah, they're creepy, man.
Yeah.
I believe from a story, like a fictional standpoint, again, I talked about this in our Salem's Lot episode. Salem's Lot is still out there.
Yeah.
It's not like it blew up. It's just in Castle Rocks.
Yeah.
I mean, it's just out there, and there's still vampires walking around. And I love that thought that it's just there.
The other little bit of horror that I love is because this would have been me too, but is that they try to drive through an unplowed road.
Yeah.
And when by all means they could have just stopped and gotten a motel, but the guy was like, "No, I can make it. I can make it."
Oh, yeah.
That's me. Like, I am someone who wants to get the drive done as quick as possible, and I like years ago I was driving. I went to Atlanta, and I was driving up from Atlanta to Chicago, and this was in 2011, I believe, or maybe 2012. I think 2011. And there were these tornadoes that ripped through like Alabama and Kentucky and stuff like that. Like really disastrous, made national news tornadoes. And like we were driving right through that storm. The sky was pitch black, and we were hearing reports on the news like, well, this town just got decimated by a tornado. 10 minutes later, we'd see the sign for that town. And I was with my friends, and we were like, should we stop? And we're like, no, just keep going.
Oh, man.
Like, because we're like, we're behind it, you know? And like, but then and we were fine, but it's like, there is that sense of like, you are taking major risks when you do that kind of shit. And like, that was just like like that was a minor part of horror for this. But like when I was watching it, I was like, dude, don't drive on the unplowed road.
Yeah.
But I probably would have done the same thing.
I think kind of that effect. This is in Maine Magazine, and I think no. But like I think to the point though, there is like some sort of authority that King has on the weather. of this area.
Yeah.
You know, like when the way he describes it,
Nor'easter.
He's like, it's the wind I don't like when it picks up and begins to howl, driving the snow into 100 weird flying shapes and sounding like all the hate and pain and fear in the world. There's death in the throat of a snowstorm, wind, white death, and maybe something beyond death. That's no sound to hear when you're tucked up all cozy in your own bed with the shutters bolted and the doors locked. It's that much worse if you're driving. And we were driving smack into Salem's Lot. And like that sort of knowledge of how that sort of that blizzard is going to be, like totally comes from a person that grew up in that area.
Yeah.
Like, you know, you could just kind of picture what a snowstorm is, but like there are like so many little details in just those lines alone and throughout the whole story that you just totally believe that like, you know, King is, and you can tell he wrote this for the main,
he's an expert
magazine
once again on that kind of working class rural, you know, main citizen. I mean, because he is one of those.
Yeah.
And just kind of going to the ending a little bit. I just want to make sure I talk about. I love how in this story that these two guys who did the right thing. I love that we know they get out of it. You know, I mean, Tookie dies a couple years later because he's old, but he doesn't die getting bitten by a vampire. You know, and I just. It's just a really nice refresher from stories like Gray Matter is great, but at the end you're like, oh, these guys
everybody's fucked.
Everyone might be fucked. I like that these two guys are able to like get back to the comfort of their bar,
and they don't compromise the horror at all because they allow more teasers.
Yeah.
You know, like they talk about how hitchhikers occasionally disappear.
Yeah.
Or always like you know, things in the lot go pretty much as they always have.
Yeah.
You know, like
yep, that's how it goes around here. Now you don't go down that road.
Also, one of the
one
of the best kickers in the whole book, tying it back to somewhere out there is just like a little girl waiting for a kiss or something.
Yeah. Says she wants a good night kiss.
Yeah, wants to get. Oh,
yikes!
God. The weather.
Yeah. Final thoughts on One for the Road and maybe even Night Shift as a whole.
Dad, can we go now?
You ready?
Yeah, we've been ready for an hour.
Okay, I'll be right there.
You said that a half hour ago. Yeah, my dad's weird. He gets like that when he's writing.
Yeah, should we give it the old
I think we should give it our rating.
What do you think, Allison? Because Allison had to depart. So
Allison had to depart.
Allison got spirited away by a vampire.
Yeah, she got spirited away.
No, she had to leave the.
Well, she did love Tookie.
She loved Tookie, and she wanted to make sure that we said, because she compared it to her neighborhood bar in Rogers Park, the neighborhood in Chicago, the Oasis. She said Tookie's is very similar, and for that reason, I think she would give Night Shift 5 Pennywise Clown. I'm just kidding. I'd say she'd probably give Night Shift 3. I'd say 3.5 or 4. Okay. Red Pennywise Clown Noses. So that's Allison's rating, and I'm going to be definitive on that. And,
sorry, Allison.
Next episode, we'll allow her to adjust that if she wants to.
And then, I think I'll give my rating. I love Night Shift. I love how much variation there is. I love that we're watching sort of young Stephen King find his voice and experiment with different voices and indulge his influences. I think there's so many memorable stories, and I don't think, I think the only story that I feel like is one I would never want to read again is Sometimes They Come Back. Yeah. And even then, I think there's good parts of it, but I'd never want to read it again. Yeah. The rest of these I feel like I could absolutely read again. Mm-hmm. And so for that reason, I'd give, and I'm always stingy with my Pennywise Clown Noses, so I'm gonna give it a 4 red Pennywise Clown Noses, and that's my definitive rating. Mike?
Well, I mean, I always come after Randall on these things, and I usually have the same rating, and on this one I do too. So 4 red Pennywise Clown Noses from me, and a lot of that is elevated by. Well, the lower 10 on this, or the top 10 on this list. These are some of the. I personally think One for the Road is better than Salem's Lot. I'm going that far to say it because I just think it's a far more effective story for me that haunts me in a certain way that a lot of stories so far that we've read haven't. And I think that there's something to be said about small scares versus long scares.
Absolutely.
Like when you could actually, when you have less, I'm a real big fan of less is more. Like when you don't have everything spelled out. And some of the stories that do that really well, like The Night Serfs or Trucks, for example. Like those that just let you linger in the mind. You don't really get that a lot in novels because you kind of have to lay it all out.
You have to complete everything.
I really like that, and I think that's the short story model
Well, yeah, I mean, look at how we're always praising the endings of all these stories. When with King, usually it's like, man, well, he kind of miffed the ending a little bit
because it's like he overextended his stay a little bit, you know. And so for me, I love it. I think this is has the last rung on the ladder is definitely, we went at lengths on that. I think that's great. For
this personally for me is my favorite so far of his writings, and I think again. It's a tribute to his short story writing versus his long form, like you were saying with the endings. I think all of these endings, and maybe it's because they don't really have an ending. A lot of them are open ended, but I just think they're terrifying. They're scary. These are the stories that have stuck with me the most so far, and some of them really scared me or really touched me more than Salem's Lot, Carrie, or The Shining.
Rage.
So, well, I think that touched everybody.
Rage.
I avoided Rage. I'm gonna definitely hit that one.
You cannot give a definitive opinion.
I know. I'm sure.
But watching you reading this, like, you definitely seem far more alive, like with a lot of these, though. Like, you were really.
I really got into it, and I think that he's much better at writing short stories than he is.
Oh boy! Keep that in there.
Yeah,
do not take that out, Dan.
Now, granted, I haven't read the only books that I had read Stephen King wise, and that was only over the last couple of years, are all the Dark Tower books. So I've not read any of these other books.
Yeah,
so
make that clear.
Obviously, I'm just saying, going right now from chronological order
I think that is a valid, interesting opinion that is necessary for this podcast.
Yeah.
I will say this. Okay, you go ahead first.
And let me just get. I'm going to give it 4.5 red Pennywise clown noses, and maybe a pom pom button.
How about that button that you bought recently?
The night shift.
Oh yeah, with the hand with the eyes on it. Yeah.
We'll take a picture of that and put it on Instagram. Okay, we'll say this, Mac. I do agree that this, up until this point, if you count the 3 King novels, the Bachman book Rage, and this, I think this is his best work. So I too would give it 4.5 Pennywise red clown noses.
Yes.
Just looking at this, but not all time, obviously, just the 70s. But looking at the short story list, I mean, granted, obviously some are better than others, but what did I say? I thought 3/4 of Sometimes They Come Back was actually pretty solid.
Yeah.
And then even after that, like, I like Battleground. I even like The Mangler for the most part, until the only reason I give it a half a nose less is because of the unnecessary use of black magic in your Manglers and your Sometimes They Come Backs and your I Know What You Needs. But I mean,
get rid of the
he's written some really strong. He's delivered some really strong short story collections as the years have gone on. But this is the best one in my opinion.
Even over different seasons?
Well, that's more of a novella collection now. That's a 4 novella.
Yeah.
This is short stories. So for the short story King collections, this is my number 1. Spoiler alert.
I'm right with Justin, man. 4 bright red Pennywise clown noses for me.
He went
4.5.
4.5. Wait, no, 4.5. Yeah.
Okay.
Did I say 4? 4.5. But yeah, 4.5 is what I meant.
Oh, okay.
Sorry. Exaggerate. Kind of fun.
I was like, okay,
yeah.
all right.
No. It is. I mean, the only book I wasn't on this episode. I would probably give Salem's Lot 5 bright red Pennywise clown noses, although I haven't read it recently. So out of the episodes I've been on, I mean, this is by far the strongest collection. Yeah, I'm with Justin. Even Sometimes I Come Back, I still was entertained by as a story. I just think it's really fascinating to see him work out some new methods of storytelling for himself. I mean, Woman in the Room and The Last Rung on the Ladder, I think, reach levels that nothing he's written so far has, and I think it's a really good indicator of what's to come. And I don't know if it's because it's the first one I read or what, but yeah, I just think this is such a strong collection. Maybe even more so than Skeleton Crew. Definitely more so than something like Nightmares and Dreamscapes. I just got A Bizarre Bad Dreams from the library, so I'll be reading
it's
that
good.
soon.
There's some good stuff, but it does not compare to Night Shift.
No, yeah, I just Night Shift as
I don't think they ever will, though.
Yeah, Night Shift has always just stuck with me my whole life, and there's a rawness about it I love too. So
You take out Sometimes Sometimes They Come Back. You take out the Lawnmower Man.
No, don't take out Lawnmower Man.
You take it out.
You need it.
You get a 5-bagger almost for me. I need a 5-noser.
I need those 5-noser. I need those green pubes. They add character and texture to this book.
If I could just make one request. For any future iTunes reviews, if you could please incorporate #green pubes in the review, we will note it. We will mention it in future episodes. Please do that.
I'm going to actively discourage you from doing that.
No, it would be great.
I don't want our iTunes reviews to be orgy of pubes of people talking about pubes all the time.
Okay.
Satyr pubes.
Yeah,
Don't
I
listen,
want
don't listen to
pubes.
Uncle Randall. Listen
Yeah.
to Uncle Justin.
Oh, boy.
It's hashtag GREENPUBES. Thank you.
Here's a funny story. My friends and I went. My brother worked at Meijer, which was a Walmart type store in
food
Michigan.
store, I think,
yeah, and we went, and my brother worked there, and he knew the code. If you picked up one of the phones that were around there and you punched in some numbers, you could get on the intercom. My brother told me what the code was, and my friends and I went one night, and we were like, we're gonna say something over the intercom, but we were all really nervous, and only one of us had the gall to do it. But we split up when we did it for some reason because we didn't want to draw a crowd, and so suddenly I just heard. And then a pause, then my friend just goes, pubes. And then hung up. And that was literally all we said, and we lost it. It was the best night of my life.
That's a short story in itself.
I know, that's a short. So thank you so much for listening. This was episode 2 of our 3-part Night Shift series. Next time we're going to be talking about the film and the TV adaptations as well as the comic. There's been some comic adaptations as well. So
One of the Lawnmower Man.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
See, that I didn't know. Well, we're going to discuss all those things next time, so stay tuned for that. And, like I said, iTunes reviews really help. You can hashtag green pubes if you want. And follow us on Facebook, follow us on Twitter. Everyone who's already involved knows that we respond because we love talking about Stephen King. So thanks so much for sticking it out with us, guys. This was really fun. And until next time, long days and pleasant nights.
Hashtag green pubes.
I got some hot friends. God, I got some hot friends. I got some hot friends. God, I got some hot friends. But you know you want somebody to treat you good.
Consequence Podcast Network.